Looks like Chris is on.
Okay. It is a little after 6, so. Low, that's really low. I swear I changed the clock on my wall to new time, but it says 5 o'clock. I guess I didn't. Somebody's playing a trick on me. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Hideout Utah Town Council special meeting and public hearing for March 29, 2022. The meeting will be an electronic meeting with no anchor site due to the fact that COVID still exists and our meeting room is simply too small to appropriately social distance. Let's get the roll call going. So Bob Nadelberg.
I am here.
Ralph Severini.
Also, I'm here.
Sherry Jacobs.
Here.
Chris Byer.
Here.
Carol Hazelton.
I'm here.
We have the council present and we have a full quorum. Thank you. First item tonight is a discussion and possible adoption of a PID policy. Is Jan on, I'm assuming?
I am here.
Okay, so will you be covering that, Jan?
Sure, happy to. Since the last meeting, the Economic Development Committee met and we had input from a variety of people and discussed different rates and why we would recommend them. And the committee decided to put 10% or 10 mils in the PID policy. And we worked with Aaron Wade, who finalized the document, and we have it here for the council's consideration.
Would it be better to use the red line so you can see the changes?
I believe we incorporated those redlined items that we had on the last document into this new document.
So I don't know that I got the new document. So it's probably, I just pulled this from the email that Aaron sent. So we probably need to accept those changes then.
Is that Alicia? You said you didn't get the new document?
I
Yeah.
think I can send it to you right now if you'd like.
Well, if the council hasn't seen it, I don't see how we can.
It's the same. We incorporated these and got rid of the redlining.
So I think if you keep scrolling down, there's a clean version.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but it says, I don't know if this is the one that Jan says is the new one or not.
It's the one that was CC'd to you, Alicia.
I really have to state that we really need that date document. Cannot count on an email version being the date. So I don't know if the council has seen had time to process the clean one or not. If the answer is no, then we're going to defer this to the next meeting.
We can defer it. If it should say 10 mil rate, 10 mils. So if this says 10, that was the last draft.
Can I just make a comment, Mayor? I know that
Sure.
Carol and I both asked for materials to be sent out to us, complete materials in time for us to review prior to the meeting. I believe Carol asked for 3 days. I don't know if we had an agreement on that or not, but we certainly do need time to look over documents. So that's my one comment. The other thing I'd like to know from Jan, because I wasn't part of the economic development meeting, is what was the reasoning for settling on the 10 mil rate, and what was the discussion, and why isn't it 9 or 8? What's the what was the reasoning in the conclusions that the committee made?
We had some comps, and the lower rates were typically very rural areas and primarily for residential development. So we also know that we discussed the fact that in MIDA allows 20 as a mill rate, and MIDA is a different project. And we asked Aaron if we could adopt a 20 mill rate in our property, and MIDA would have to adopt the 20. So we looked basically at the comp projects and thought for a mixed use development, 10 would be a good solid number to work with, and we could allow more based on a project if there were things that we wanted to specifically bring into the project. This PID policy allows for us to deviate from 10 based on what is presented.
There was one more thing we looked at, Chris, was so all that, the amenities that would go in, and some of the spread of the towns that we looked at. I think there was call it roughly 10. The median number that came up most frequently was 10 mils as well. So it kind of fit into the middle of the most commonly used mill rate.
Are there other similarly sized developments or towns, or what that you use, Ralph? For
Yeah,
this?
the amenity.
I don't know if it was how arbitrary this was, or if there was, comparisons, and we're sort of adopting something that's been accepted elsewhere.
Yeah, it coincided with what Jan was just saying. So the slightly higher number reflected towns that had used the PID for a project with greater amenities. It wasn't so high as, there were a couple in the 12 to 15 range, but it wasn't so low that it was just kind of a basic non-amenity project. So, and then again, most of them came up at 10. That was the median number, I think. Out of the 10, something like 5 came up as, the 10 mil rate. So it just kind of led us to that conclusion more or less than anything.
And would we want to have in our policy some kind of sliding mill rate? And I'm just asking, kind of devil's advocate, like if we get no amenities. Well, if we get no amenities, why would we agree to establish a PID in the first place? But was there any discussion of that? Or have we simply, is this policy just simply meant as a guideline, and, 10 would be the ceiling?
We talked about that last time, Chris, and we're not allowed to do a sliding rate. You have to pick a fixed number.
Okay, thank you. And I don't remember us talking about that, but okay.
That was discussed, and that's what we were told by the experts.
Okay. So are you
I asked the
saying,
same question.
yeah, are you saying that the policy then that we haven't had a chance to read yet, with whatever changes we're in, and if Jan is now saying it's just the mill rate that was changed, everything else is the same as it was in the last meeting. But we didn't. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
No, they've incorporated other red line comments in the document that we haven't seen in the clean version. So
Okay, I think the council needs to read.
I'm recommending that we get the clean version sent out immediately so that we don't have this discussion the next time, and we put this on the next meeting.
Sounds good.
I'm sorry, but little
I'll
lack of
send it.
communication here, because there's no mill rate here. It's just blanked.
I'll send the document to the council tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be great. And I think when we get our packet 3 days in advance of the next meeting, that it should be complete at that time with all of the correct versions of things, so that we, can feel confident that, we're being asked to consider exactly, the right document.
You're right, Chris, and we keep getting better at our processes, and we'll incorporate that and make sure we compare.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to feel rushed about anything that we do, right? We're making some really important decisions here.
We are.
Great, Chris.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No pushback from me on that. I agree. We signed we made a policy that if stuff wasn't in the 10 days before the meeting, it couldn't go on the agenda. And we haven't done a good job of adhering to that. So, we have a policy, we committed to it as a council. We all agreed it was the right thing to do, and it's going to force folks to get together, recognizing that we have limited staff. We have provided some leniency there, but we've slipped too far towards the actual deadline where we're getting stuff on the day of. It's just not appropriate. So we'll just have to tough it out and accept that if it's not in, if we don't have the package on Monday of the meeting week or Tuesday of the meeting week, we're not covering it. So
You're here.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Now we get to the public hearing items. The first one on the agenda is was an amendment of a lot amendment, but it has been recommended by staff that this item be continued to the April 14th regular town council meeting. So we're going to continue that to a date certain, which is the April 14th town council meeting. Okay. The next one is an update on the Boulders subdivision. And I'm going to turn it over to Thomas. I know who's been working hard on this. And I'll let you take us through it, Thomas. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So we had originally thought that the applicants needed to have a final meeting a little bit earlier than what they ended up needing. So tonight's meeting, as you can see on the one-page staff report, is really that they were able to buy a little bit more time with the owner of the property. And so there was a little bit more time for you all to discuss this and ask questions. So we thought we would kind of use this meeting as an opportunity to see if you all had more specific questions based on the staff report and the input that you had from the last meeting, and to give the applicants a little bit more time to explain some newly provided information to you. They did provide an updated fiscal analysis, so I thought we could walk through that. They have a traffic study that was just provided. I know that I think Ryan Taylor may or may not be on, I'm not exactly sure, but he hasn't had time to review it just yet, but he could probably give you a little bit of insight on that in his subsequent, or pending, I should say, staff report. But I thought we could walk through those couple of things and then really just talk a little bit more about the project so that we schedule a meeting for a final vote on this, because time is still of the essence, if I understand correctly, but I know that it's a big project. It's a lot of development. It'll be the biggest project that you guys have reviewed and approved. And so I thought this meeting would give you guys additional opportunity to kind of have a bit of a work session with the applicant and give them an opportunity to convey things to you. So this one's a pretty casual meeting in as much as we're not looking for a vote tonight, but really input back and forth.
Thomas, can I start if you don't mind? Could you flip to your, I think it was the March 3rd staff report that you had? And would you mind going over to the zoning? Because I'm looking at what we have on the agenda for number 2 of public hearing items, and it's discussion and possible approval of an amendment to the official town of Hideout zoning map to rezone 4 parcels with a lot of density. And I'd like us to just take a look at your staff report again. And then I have a discussion I'd like to have with the council members.
Yeah, there was, Thomas, if you remember last time, there was a discussion about an alternative way versus a rezone. We're going to do it.
Yes.
So
So-
can you bring us up to date on that?
I can. And who was sharing the staff report? Was that Alicia or was that you, Mayor?
It was me and I just stopped. Because
You can go ahead and share yours. It's probably easier if you share yours, if you don't mind. My staff report was right after that updated staff report, so we can go to it there. When we were at the last meeting, the proposed zoning designations.
Here it is.
Yep, there it is. The proposed zoning designations did allow for a significant amount of zoning, which was a concern. We looked into different opportunities for the MDA. And one of the allowances in the code is for a planned performance development. So we really thought that that might be an ideal way to approach it. I think Claim is a PPD, and I think Lakeview is as well, I think. And so we thought that may be an ideal opportunity to look at an overlay for this development that would be similar to how you approach those. As we dug a little bit deeper, the code can't and doesn't envision anything greater than 150% density increase. And so this is a more significant density increase, the request for zoning is. And so anything beyond 150% can't be accommodated by a planned performance development. And so we backed out of that one and we started looking at the RSPA, the Resort Specially Planned Area, which also allows for a little bit of flexibility for a development of this size. And it also only allows a density of 1.5 units maximum per acre. So at this scale, the property being requested for the rezone or considered for the MDA is 112 acres. So at 1.5 units per acre, it doesn't even get over the 200 unit mark. The ask is for 577 ERUs or about 610 keys, 610 doors. So it also doesn't get us there. So where we're kind of looking now is maybe a combination of a PPD, a planned performance development overlay for most of the area, with the exception of the hotel. But as we consider that, it still may not work in terms of density, in terms of the request, because if we take out, say, 30-ish acres for the hotel and the big box condo or the big house condos, there's still a fair amount of density outside. And I don't think that the outlying 90-ish, 80-ish acres is going to get to the density that's being requested. So that is a long way of saying we've tried a number of different routes pursuant to our existing codes. I'm not sure they'll work. And so it may be that we have to kind of come back full circle to zoning designations as drawn, which does give, which does allow for a significant amount of density. Again, that can't be controlled in an MDA. Go ahead, Chris.
Can you switch to that chart, or maybe Mayor, if you're displaying?
I think it's the second page down or the third page down, Mayor, if you just kind of scroll down a little bit here.
If push comes to shove, are we stuck with the 1920? That was the whole reason that we were going after a PPD, was so that we wouldn't be stuck with the potential of 1920 units being, or somewhere in the 1900 range. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but is that the case, Thomas?
I think the answer to the question is yes. I don't think that we're going to find another way around utilizing zoning district designations. So I don't think the PPD will work, and I don't think that the RSPA will work. And so we're probably going to have to go back to the zoning designations, the specific designations. And if you keep going down, you'll see it. If you keep going down, Mayor.
Mayor, it's
This
a chart.
here?
No, keep going. There's a big chart.
Keep going.
that You're on in the report. Please keep going.
You told me there's a couple pages and it's not there, so I thought maybe I missed it. You're looking for this.
Sorry, I couldn't remember. Let's see, my screen's kind
I'm
of.
sorry, I'm just trying to.
Nope, keep going.
It's down a little further. Huh.
I'm sorry. So Thomas, you thought that trying to do kind of what I was thinking of was almost like a donut of doing the PPD on the outside, which would have, 1.5 amount of density, having an NMU in the center where the hotel would be, and then maybe having some higher density for the condos. You don't think that'll work with what they're proposing?
My concern is this: if you kind of look at the yellow area there, that's kind of the boutique hotel and the hotel area, right? If you look just kind of under that upside down L, there's some kind of a blue area with the big house condos. So that entire area would likely need to be in this NMU or an NMU, neighborhood mixed use development zoning designation, and maybe a higher density residential to make that work. But if you look at that area, it's about 25, 30 acres, just kind of eyeballing it. So that means the remaining PPD would be, say, 80 acres, 80 at 1.5, 80 at 150%, would give you about 140 units. And there's still about 300 units that exist outside of that neighborhood mixed use area, the yellow area, and that little blue kind of pocket. So I don't know if it'll work. I think we might still fall short.
So Mayor, go to page 15 of this presentation of Thomas's report. I think it says in the bottom, page 15. That's what I'm looking for.
Yep, it's down
Keep going.
Keep going.
Yep, keep going. It's just a text area with lots of bold. And it's a summary. There you go.
There it is.
Now we're there. Okay. So I don't know if anybody on the council is willing to write a blank check here for rezoning as requested, as displayed on this chart, for a total of 1923 ERUs. We are essentially, I mean, maybe it's impossible to get all that up there because of the topography and such, but we don't have that information in front of us. But I can't imagine that any of us on the council would write a blank check for something like this.
I understand that, and that is why we thought we could look at the planned performance development or the R spot. And honestly, I don't think that we can make those work. And so, to your point, certainly an MDA limit density, but you still run the risk of having zoning on the ground that does allow for additional units. And so I understand that risk. I don't know if there's another way around it. I suppose we could start to really hone in on the concept plan and really narrow down the R20, for example, really hone in on the R6 and narrow those down. But I don't know that we're going to get much below maybe even 1,200 or so. It's just going to look like on the ground the zoning allows for significantly more.
So Thomas, we would have to decrease, can you go back to that page? We would have to decrease the number of acres, which is 56 for the highest density, say for that residential R20 or the NMU, which comes in at 20. We would have to reduce the number of acres that are in that particular subzone, so to speak, and to get down to a more reasonable number, well below 1923. So as Chris says, writing a blank check against that, mathematically, so to speak, we'd have to, move the numbers around here to get down to a lower number, or legally poly. I think you were leading into the PPD, if that doesn't work, do we have an MDA piece of protection that gives us, long range protection for the town, or some other, legal vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the MDA does max it out at a certain number, but there is just a few, the zoning is the zoning. I've tried to craft something that where the zoning wouldn't go into effect until a year from now, but I haven't had a chance to speak with the applicants' attorneys about that concept and how we're going to address that. It's a real concern for the town. This is a lot of units, right? And it's, even though it would be limited by the MDA, it's what if the project doesn't happen or that kind of thing. You just, it's harder to undo it. So that's why we're trying to kind of kick the can a little bit to say, hey, this doesn't become effective unless this project is moving forward. So, you know, and I was leaning towards the PID. I hadn't looked at it that closely to realize that it only has that 1.5, but it did kind of strike me that for residential, that seems to be kind of what the council, that seemed to be the kind of density that the council was looking for in a sense, because generally for residential, because you have that for your R spa and also for that performance zone. That being said, you do also have these other zones that are available in our code, but where you're trying to cluster and that kind of thing, it maxes out at 1.5, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've explored the mechanisms here. You know, I mean, just if we were protected legally in some fashion, that would be much better. And then two, yeah, hey, Thomas, you know, again, can you, if you pare down the number of acres, for instance, if you cut down the number of acres to just call it the, you know, residential R20 to 28 acres, that cuts down, you know, 560 units. So, you know what I'm saying? That just
Ralph,
shades that.
it's a good point and a good question. And so, yeah, we can. The challenge is and the applicants can certainly jump in at any moment. The challenge is that what we have in front of us is a concept plan, and some things are fairly fluid. They're not really defined right now. So where some things may be located on the concept plan, the applicants have indicated they could end up in different spaces, right, in different places. And so until there's a much better understanding of topography and grading, they're not exactly sure where they could go. And so of course there's a desire for some flexibility on the part of the applicant. And so we could probably pare it down a little. I'm not so sure how far we can pare that down before, you know, maybe a plat comes in and it's relatively or significantly different than, say, the concept plan based on the contours, et cetera. It could be different. So,
yeah, I mean,
Hey.
if we just can lower the R20s and the NMU acres, then it becomes a little bit more palatable.
Can I add to that, Thomas, Ralph?
Go ahead, Todd.
sure.
Yeah. So a couple things we completely understand, which is, you know, the concern of the town, which is why we've been working on this. And Thomas has been great, and Paulie and Jan and everyone has been fantastic to try and work through these. And wherever we end up, I think at the end of the day, the one thing that's really clear that kind of Ralph brought up, the MDA can absolutely govern what the maximum density could be. So the zoning may say, sure, the zoning could be allowed to 1900. And I think there's ways that we could pare it back to get that number down. But the MDA can absolutely and will be recorded against the property, held on title, that gives the town a legal right to say, hey, the maximum number of units will be the 577 units. Not to mention, you know, as I think Chris pointed out, you know, there's some physical limitations, you know, to the site, and Ryan's been really great about going through that. And you know, from a grading standpoint, from you know, all of the other mechanisms that are in the town's code, those are things that have to be adhered to. So again, I think just the simplistic form is the MDA absolutely can limit the density that is allowed on the property, despite what the zoning says, because that is a recorded document against the title. And that's what we're used to. We're used to that process of, hey, you have, this is the zoning category that it fits in, and then that gets further defined by the MDA and further reduced in terms of what was agreed upon. So anyway, just wanted to add my 2 cents.
Hey, then thanks. I appreciate that. And this is new information for me that Thomas and Polly provided about, you know, the PPD can only be 1.5 times the current zoning is there a way that we could find a zoning that doesn't write a blank check for an unbelievable number of VRUs that we can then put a PPD over that would get to the number that we're trying to get to for this particular project? And also, you know, I like Polly's idea of not having the zoning go into effect unless this thing proceeds, because we can't, it's going to be hard to undo if we change the zoning. And we don't want to give away any more allowable density than we need to for the specific project.
You know,
I don't know if
I
any of
think
that's
that's what
possible, but I'm
they're
just
trying to
thinking-
do, Chris.
I'm just
I
thinking
think
about
that's
the
what they're
math.
trying to do, Chris. I'm not sure they nailed it.
Yeah, maybe, do you mind if I add something?
Sure.
So Chris, we agree with you and Ralph and the mayor and everybody. We have zero intention of having an entitlement that is 1,900 units. Our plan demonstrates what it is that we want the 577 units. So Todd and I are completely open to any mechanism that we can come up with that can help accomplish that. It is our understanding, and we're going to spend this week with our attorneys to go over this at length, because it has always been my understanding that you can take whatever the underlying zoning is, you layer on top of that your MDA, and it amends it. It literally is an amendment to what that underlying zoning is. And so that MDA is going to govern what happens, in the same way that you guys can't negotiate your MDA with Bob Martino. Have you guys been able to get out of any of the arrangements that you have in the master development agreement with Bob Martino?
So McKay, you wouldn't be opposed to us taking off the table these requested zoning designations?
Oh,
As-
in fact, I would
unreasonable?
prefer, based off what I know about the PPD, I would prefer the PPD. Absolutely. Because so here's the challenge with what you guys are talking about. Like, say you take R120 and you say, and R120 has a zone, right? And let's just say it includes the townhomes. If we shrink the R120 zone for the sake of limiting the acreage, well, then what is half of the townhomes going to be zoned as? They're going to fall under a different zoning ordinance that does not allow townhomes, or maybe allows more than townhomes. And so the mechanism that would then govern that would be the MDA, right? That would, and so the challenge that we have with creating these artificial boundaries on things is that if a road jogs because of topography or something, has to jog slightly outside that boundary, and it pulls a unit or something like that outside of it, all of a sudden that's outside of the zone and it doesn't comply with whatever that zoning is. That's why I would prefer to have two zones, basically an NMU, kind of like an NMU zone that talks about the hotel and the condos and that kind of stuff, and then a PPD for the balance of it. I think that probably is a better idea. And I think that density could probably be amended with an MDA to say that, notwithstanding such and such and such section, this overlay or this MDA states that these are the conditions under which the development is going to be developed. And to me,
And if I could just jump in here, there is a way. As I said, we have started to explore every single angle with regard to how we can do this in a way that protects council and gives a bit of flexibility to the developer. One thing that, you know, I have thought about and started playing with on some of the mapping is, it could be that the council decides to rezone the area, say R6. And if you rezone it R6, it's 6 units per acre. 6 units per acre at the 112 acres is just above 660 units, give or take, right? We could do that. That would be the new base zoning. I'd take a donut hole out of that for the NMU, the neighborhood mixed use zone, to allow for the hotel kind of in the center of it, right? And then you could put a PPD over the R6 zoning. You could do that because at R6 at 150%, you still have a little bit of flexibility. And the PPD does not allow for commercial development, so it would not overlay the center part, the donut hole that would be neighborhood mixed use, which would be where the hotel and the B&B could be located. So that is an opportunity. That would bring all of the zoning down. We probably have to amend the tables a little bit with regard to setbacks for R6 to accommodate the various housing typologies on the concept plan, but it is a doable mechanism. So again, it'd be an R6 rezone by the council with a little donut hole NMU in the middle for the hotel. That would be the rezone, set the base density, and then you'd have to drop the PPD over the residential component of that. But that would get it to a lower allowable density, not one that is just limited by the MDA, if that makes sense, and ask questions.
Okay, well, it sounds like you have to do some work outside of this meeting for, you know.
We
putting
do.
it together.
It's really an acreage and calculation
Right.
exercise, yeah.
But I just want to ask the council, is there any situation that number 2 item on our public hearing agenda that we would possibly approve what we have in front of us? Which we're showing.
Not tonight.
Not tonight or ever for anyone. I mean, why would we ever?
Chris, I hope you understand that's not what we're asking. We're not in any way, we are not in any way asking for that. And we will do whatever we need to do in order to make sure that you and the rest of the council are comfortable with the fact that it does not exceed 610 units or 577 ERUs. We will do whatever we need to do to get there.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm glad you guys are going to work on it, but I'd like, maybe this is a question for the mayor. Mayor, why do we keep having number 2 worded as it is, where we're being asked to possibly approve an amendment of the zoning map, and it's very specific about the parcels and the zoning?
Because this is a continued hearing from the last time, Chris.
So in order
So
to take this,
don't change the language we don't change the language on that.
so in order to take this particular proposal off the table, do we have to deny it?
No,
We wouldn't continue it. We would just renotice it for something new.
yeah, I
Or you
would
could even
suggest
amend
that
it.
you would just amend it because it's already gone through planning commission and you have the ability to amend it. So I would suggest that moving forward, it be amended. It would still be a zoning change, but it would be amended.
Okay, that would be great, Polly, because I'm disturbed by the fact that it keeps coming back in this form. And if this is what we're being asked to consider based on the agenda, you know.
And Chris, we will give you, Todd and I will give you our word that that's not at all what we are asking for. And when the time comes, we continue these meetings. Whenever the actual final proposal comes before the city council, it will not be 1,900 units. You have my word. It will be 610 and 577. And that motion can be amended at any time to reflect that.
Okay, thank you.
The numbers that I just worked out, that based upon Thomas, if you kept the acreage the same in each of the 4 categories, would still only bring us down to 1232. So, you know, assuming you kept those same acreages per, you know, segment, R3, R6, and R20, moving them all to R6 at 6 units per acre. So it sounds better, but it's probably not, you know, probably need to lock in some legal terms to protect us.
We agree, Ralph.
Yeah, I figured you did.
Yeah.
So I know we're all trying to aim to the same thing. We just want to protect future generation, you know.
We totally get it. We don't want that either. We don't want that at all.
Hey, can I just throw out one more thing? Polly, is it possible that, and we're not asking for this tonight, but I'm just trying to put the thought out there. Is it possible to approve a zoning that says in the language of the approval that it's conditioned upon allowing no more than 577 ERUs? Like, isn't that as effective as anything?
It's a different mechanism. I mean, you can't, you know, the zoning is the zoning. So it's only because there's the MDA that would limit the overall numbers.
But
Correct. But what I'm saying is,
let's say, like, just imagine that you're subdividing some land and it's zoned, you know, 1 per acre. A governmental entity can't say, well, we're changing the zoning, but actually you can only have you know, 1 per 3 acres, right? Like the zoning is the zoning. So the mechanism to limit it is going to be through the MDA. And
Right.
so
And I
that's
no,
what
and I
we-
agree. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was just saying, kind of as a further belt and suspenders, I've had other municipalities that where we've tried to go in and get a zoning, and the zoning was allowed density of up to X, and the city said, "Hey, this is the only zoning category that fits, so we're going to give you that." But in the minutes of the meeting and as part of the recorded zoning approval, there was a carve out that said that no more than X amount of units will be allowed on the site, and then
That's right.
it was belt and suspended with an MDA. And that MDA further spelled out all the specific details of it, including the maximum density in the area. So anyway, just a thought. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We just want to make sure everyone's really clear that we're not trying to get anything more than we've asked for. We recognize your dilemma, and we're happy to work through, as we have, with Thomas and staff for weeks now, what's the best way to accomplish that. So we're happy to do whatever makes the most sense.
I think actually the best thing, maybe, I don't know. I mean, we've explored this quite a bit with Thomas and with Polly. I think maybe the next best step would be to have our attorney and Polly and Thomas just sit down and go through the legally what the best mechanism is. That's all we're looking for. Is the plan is all the same. It's just what's the mechanism in order to incorporate that, and we will cooperate with the city in every way that we can to try to accomplish that.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think there are some nuanced details that we'll really have to get into. Again, it is mapping acreage and calculations at the end of the day.
Just to give you an idea, Polly, we just did a project in Pleasant Grove that had a higher density allocation, and we have an overlay on top of it that limits the amount of density that we can have. We do that fairly often, and so I think that I feel confident that there's a way that we can sort this out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, that's what we're trying to do. We just need to get together to do it, right?
Yeah, and
Awesome.
Polly, that's on us, because this last week we've been working on a bunch of other documents to prepare for the council coming up for, we hope to get to them soon, and we haven't been able to get with our attorney and you. And so we'll make sure that we get that done next week.
Okay, thanks, guys. I think
Thank
we've
you.
appropriately discussed that. Any other comments from council around that zone? I think Chris speaks for all, and say we're trying to, and Ralph, that we're trying to find a way to box it appropriately so doesn't come back and bite us at some time in the future should something unfortunate happen with this particular application. Okay, so Thomas, there were some other things you wanted to look at, so remind me again so I can go to them.
So I think it may be worth, I know that council had wanted to talk a little bit about some gives and gets, and we can walk through that. I'm wondering if before we do that, though, I think that there was a new fiscal analysis submitted, and
We got these pie charts.
okay, so you've got the pie charts, and I think there may have been a table. Do you have a table? It might have just come in a day or two ago. Do you see that?
I'll have to ask Alicia if it's a table. It should be in here.
We
Yeah,
sent
it
the fiscal analysis out a couple days ago.
It's in the packet.
Sometime after Thomas's thing here somewhere.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I guess what I should do is go to here and back up. Well, I guess this old one's probably on the way to. No, that's later, so that's too far. So maybe.
Is that the old packet, Mr. Mayor? No.
Well, this is the old. I don't know if it's after the old packet or after. It wasn't after the new packet because this is the new packet,
Oh,
the draft engagement letters and all. So so let me look at my email and see if I can pull it up that way. I'm not finding it in the
Shoot, sorry.
package.
Yeah, Mayor, that may have been a separate attachment. If you can find that, that may be worth some discussion. I know that
I'm trying
council.
to find it.
Okay,
Thomas, if you can find it in your mail, or Alicia, you can find it in yours, that's fine. Tell me at least the date. I have a better chance of finding it.
okay. Well, maybe you're teeing that up. I can look, but I'll also just note that council did ask for an updated fiscal analysis, and they kind of wanted to understand both revenues and expenses, if to the extent possible. And so I think
Did that have come from McKay, or do we know, or from? Alicia?
yeah, Todd and I sent the fiscal analysis, coming out of that last meeting, there were a couple things that the city council wanted: a fiscal
I
analysis,
got the trucks.
a parking study, a traffic study, and
I have a
so,
property and sales tax projection. Is that what
yes,
you're talking about?
Yep.
This one here?
yep, let's see.
And
Yes, that's it.
I'll
Yes,
know about this on Saturday, right?
Yeah. Yep. So if you want me to, I could just step through this really quickly.
Yeah, I
and-
mean, if you don't mind,
Sure.
McKay, that'd be great.
Okay, thanks, Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
sorry, McKay, before you go, McKay,
Uh-huh.
what has changed here from the fiscal analysis that we saw maybe a month or two ago? Is this the same one?
Not a lot. I think a lot of the council members had said that coming out of that meeting, the thing that Todd and I heard a lot was that you guys wanted documents and you wanted to have them in enough advance to be able to review them. And I was under the impression, while we did send it out a long time ago, I was under the impression that maybe some of you hadn't seen it. And so Todd and I just wanted to send it again. It has been updated just kind of based on values and things like that. And so, but it's not dramatically different. No, Chris, from the one that you've seen. And so if you want, we can just kind of start at the top and explain the different tables. When you look at these things, they're so like arcane looking, it's hard to even understand sometimes. But why don't I just start at the top? And if you guys have any questions, please just chime in. The pie charts relate specifically to this, and we can maybe go through that right after. But we divided this table into basically 3 different categories. We have the hotel, the 150 key hotel and restaurant. We bundled the restaurant into the hotel as it's shown in our site plan. And I'll go back and I'll step through the numbers on these. We have the 20 key boutique hotel and the restaurant that operates out of that. And then in the retail operating metrics, we also have, the coffee shop with juice. We have sundries. We have mixed use retail. And then actually, I apologize, there's 4 categories. And after that, we have all of the property, the total property tax, that comes, that's the very last line item. And so I'll just step through this so you guys can go through it line by line. But if we go back out, so it's basically the hotel, the boutique, the hotel and restaurant, the boutique hotel and restaurant, the retail, and the property taxes. These are all the sources of revenue that would come from the boulders. So basically what we're showing is we have a number of hotel condos at that top line item. Then we go through occupancy, and you can see it projects out. We just took it over a 4-year projection. We didn't take it longer, or I'm sorry, over a 5-year term. We didn't take it past 5 years, but it shows that we started about 60% occupancy, and that's blended throughout the year. So we have shoulder seasons where it's much, much lower. And then we have others, summertime and the winter when it's higher. But we start at 60%. We gradually go up, 2 to 3% year over year in the occupancy as people find out about the project and it becomes more well known. We get to our ADR. We've got, some of these terms you don't need RevPAR and all that stuff you don't really need to know, but we show occupied rooms, available rooms. The important thing is we come down to our total revenue of about 10 million. And then the restaurant we show generating at about 2.25 million. And this is the one area where Todd and we've tried to be really conservative. Most restaurants in the 4,000 square foot range to do over $2 million is very good. It's very, very good. There are some restaurants in Park City that far exceed that, that do much, much better. And so that's a conservative projection. If it did 3 million or 3.5 or 4 million, we would be blown away. We'd be ecstatic. There's revenue that's collected off of meeting rooms and other things like sundries and other type of stuff that gets sold, and conferences and stuff like that. So what you have is a total revenue of $13,600,173 in year one. The city's 1% tax that they collect off that annually is $136,000. And then you go to the boutique hotel and that restaurant, and I won't step through all the same things, but it's just kind of basically the same thing. On that restaurant, we also use 2.25. Again, it could be higher. That came down to about $39,000, almost $40,000 a year annually off of those two sources. You come down to the other retail, we've got about 1,500 square feet. In the coffee shop, we have that sundries, that's 500 square feet. After all of our conversations with Thomas, originally we had about 2,500 square feet of retail. We've added another 7,500 square feet of retail that goes on the bottom of those condo buildings that we talked about. So we've added about a little over 7,000 square feet. So in total, that generates another $20,000 annually. So the total, basically, this is kind of a summary. The total for the hotel and the restaurant is 175. The retail projections are 20, and then the property tax that's collected that's property tax that's generated by the hotel, by all of the condos, basically by everything. The boutique hotel, the clubhouse, every one of the single family homes that are built up, all 610 units. That amounts to $970,000 at build out in year one. And then it gradually goes up over time. So, you're roughly around $1 million and going up off of $1 million. Do you guys have any questions on that before we, I mean, at the end of the day, the bottom line is just kind of the total stabilized tax increment to the city. And that's a combination of transient tax, retail sales tax, and property tax. And so that would be, I guess, if you were to put an economic dollar, the benefit that this project is to the city, you'd say it's worth about $1 million to the city annually in year one and going forward. Do you guys have any questions on that? Yeah, so there's the pie charts. The reason why we put this together is it gives you an idea. There's been a lot of talk about density and the concern over density. And what this actually demonstrates is how a small portion, so the first pie chart is basically a land distribution. It shows the mixed use land. And in the mixed use land, we are including the condos, the boutique hotel, the mixed use building, and the hotel. That makes up about 14% of our 100, and it's about 16 acres of 112 total acres. So it's about 14% of the total land. Of that, our density, the density on that 16 acres is that's the unit distribution. We're over 50%. Over 50% of our units are on that 16 acres of land in the mixed use zone. And then the last pie chart, and it's broken down, you can see it's broken down per unit on that pie chart. The last one is the income and sales tax distribution. That's just a basic reflection of what we just went over. And those 16 acres, the townhome, or I'm sorry, not the townhomes, but the hotel, the condos, the hotel, the boutique hotel and restaurant, the clubhouse, the mixed use condo, all of that generates over 50% of the total revenue that the city gets. And so you could see the little, roughly 16 acres of land is working pretty hard economically. The other benefit that it provides is that because of its footprint, because we've got a smaller footprint and we're going up with our density, it has disproportionately more open space attached to it than a lot of the detached product does. So again, that 16 acres is working pretty hard. And that's all I got. If you guys on the fiscal analysis, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to fire away.
I have a question. Does anyone have any numbers on what the project will end up costing the town per year? Just curious how that works out.
Yeah, are you talking about in terms of, Jan and I actually talked about that briefly. That's information that would probably be better if we got some information from the city on what your guys' costs are, but that's what I would assume is probably would be considered, maintenance. Now, the city collects impact fees typically on stuff and the impact fees. So in addition, that's a line item that we didn't show up on these tables, is that as we go build, we end up paying impact fees for the infrastructure that we're putting in. And those impact fees in a lot of cases are used, at least in portion, to maintain the property. So they should be self-sustaining to some extent, and paid for out of those impact fees. But we don't have, those aren't numbers that I have. It'd probably be better furnished by the city, I would think.
Yeah, Sherry, I believe that Jan and the Economic Development Committee, we're going to put some thought into that. I don't know what the progress is on that. So Jan, you have any comments? Where we are
Yes,
with that?
I do. I suggest, I've been talking to Rob Sant about getting some numbers to us. I need to run his financial request by you before we continue, but I think we continue with Rob. He's very aware of some of the details in the town since we've had him do the other studies, and there's more work we can do on that. And I think we continue that as soon as possible.
So the question is, why can the developer, the applicant, pay those fees for this study instead of the town having to do that? When we're talking about a study, how much it's going to cost, to Sherry's question, how much is it going to cost the town to have this development now that's well beyond our current zoning in that area, for road maintenance and other infrastructure, ongoing costs.
Right.
And we don't have, and by the way, McKay, I don't believe we have a impact fee plan. I forget what it's called, IFFP, that would cause you to have to pay impact fees at the moment on anything, right? Right, Thomas? We talked about impact fee, possibly creating kind of a plan to support parks or, other public infrastructure that would experience, we might have excess capacity on, and that we would then be having this new development, either tying into or using, but we don't have that.
No, I think that's a fair question. And I think Todd and McKay are going to look into that, because I know you all had asked for revenues and expenses, so kind of a gross fiscal, right? And so park expenses, city utility expenses, road expenses, those kinds of things are something that we should look at taking into account.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the HOA responsibilities up there versus the municipal, which is the other thing that needs to get talked about. I mean,
yeah, and I would also say
the HOA is going to be cutting the grass, or is the town going to be cutting the grass, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. We as we get into all of our HOA docs and stuff like that, we completely agree. That's something that we can that we feel confident doing, and would be happy to do that. With regards to parks, Chris, typically the way impact fees work, went through this at in all of our master plan communities that we do, but we'll pay an impact fee, and then we'll go typically put in a park, and then we use those impact fees to get reimbursed for the parks that we put in. And so in effect, it's almost like a self-reimbursement. The benefit that we have of getting these PID dollars put in place is, in many ways, it just replaces that mechanism. And so the PID will actually pay for the parks and things like that. So there's no need to collect a park fee for the development.
And I think I just add, Chris, to your question. If we can get the data from the town in terms of what current maintenance costs are on roads, et cetera, snow removal, et cetera, we're happy to put that together and add that at the next meeting for our fiscal analysis. We just need the data from the town in terms of, every municipality has their own, set of financials in terms of how they operate things and how they're currently being operated, and then we can address it after that.
Oh, great. That sounds good. We'd really like to see that next.
Great.
Happy to
Great.
do it.
Thank you.
Could I just ask, because I just wasn't sure, on your income and sales tax distribution,
Mhm.
what's the basis for the residential? Is that from property tax, or what is that?
Property, that's property tax.
And how much are you expecting that to be?
The property tax portion is $778,000 at build out.
And how
And
much?
that's just the
will-
town's portion.
There it is. Polly, it's in this spreadsheet.
Okay,
document.
I'm sorry. It was little on my computer, so I was just trying to understand it. And then
So
you're
let's-
saying that it'll be $1 million annually for the commercial? Proposed?
No, $1 million in the aggregate. So if you look at the summary on the very bottom, it kind of summarizes. Basically, I should have turned it a different color on the summary, but basically it's taking those 4 different buckets. It's taking, well, the 3 different. It's taking the hotel and the restaurant. It's summarizing the tables above and putting a total. So it's $175,000 for the hotel and the restaurant. That's the transient tax and the retail tax that's going to be coming off of the restaurants. And then the retail projections at $20,000 a year is coming off the retail sales. And then the property tax projections are coming off, $100 million hotel plus the $100 million in condos plus the, whatever else as we go through the property.
So Mac, couple of things on the numbers. I know we've gone through them. I just thought it'd be useful
Mhm.
for, the folks on the call here, so to speak. So if you just look at the incremental, the way I look at the numbers is the incremental value to us is in under the summary, total hotel and restaurant and retail projections. That's something that the town does not have now. That totals, let's say that just totals 195,000, which is 126% of what the town is estimated to collect in our total property taxes currently. So that's a nice number, but our total budget is about 1.6 million. The 772, it's a huge number, but I think as Sherry was alluding to, that's what's the expense against that number, and that's a little bit harder to determine, but should be determined or at least estimated. And my reverse math. So if you take you divide 0.00823 into 772,000, you get an assessed value of 938 million across the project. So is that what is, that's just, reverse math here.
Yeah.
What is that about what you're coming up with?
That's
Matt?
fairly
I think
close.
that's actually conservative. Just being really, really transparent. It's the overall value of the project at full build out is going to be north of $1 billion.
Okay, and some of that is some of that assessed value, because you're using the standard of 0.00823, which is
That's
equates
right.
to, yeah. So and of course, full-time homeowners get 45% off of that. But that sounds, so if you think it's going to be over $1 billion in total assessed, or a total what is it, the way our taxes, taxable property value is
Mhm.
what we call it in the county, then then your numbers make sense, and the 195 would go to our bottom line and essentially equate to 126% of our estimated property tax revenue coming in, which is a net increase. So the numbers seem to stand up in general based upon what you're saying. But I also know you changed some of the original numbers. Somebody was asking before, what were the changes? And I noticed, I think you had, a little bit higher numbers on the retail, but I don't think we need to spend too much time on that because they're not that significant on the retail. It's only $20,000. If we get the other numbers right, we'll probably, feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, and to answer that, we, on the retail, we added more gross square footage, but that it's one of those numbers where we want to be conservative on it. If we go build all the stuff and it's killing it, then it's an upside. We just are we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We're saying that, this is a conservative number. The other thing that I would say is when it comes to the expenses, the high density stuff actually is a benefit because there's less road per unit of expenses, right? You've got a hotel that has 150 units in it. It's got, less frontage than 150 1-acre lots, right? So your expense per unit is also much, much lower on our high densities.
Yeah, actually, your
And
expense for tax dollar received is lower. That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
for us. So,
you're right.
Just
and
another way to look at it financially. But in any case, I think you're also right. I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, we don't have that in town now, but that's why you have higher density in smaller areas, and it becomes more profitable.
That's
And
right.
I think the other thing to point out is the hotel and the condos both will likely have their own association, whether that be a traditional HOA or another district that will own and maintain their common areas and roads within their project area. So, those are very efficient from a tax standpoint for the town.
Yeah,
that's a great point, Todd, because you're pulling off of a road into private drives and parking, not even parking lots, because most of them it's all going to be subterranean. It's all going to be underground, but most of that infrastructure is built in to the development itself. That's right.
What is your timeline?
Yeah, that's the other thing we haven't put boundaries around who's going to do what. So do we just say that basically the whole, for our analysis, we can say the assumption is the whole hotel area is basically handled by the hotelier. And
without question.
It's, infrastructure, and it's just the residential stuff that the town we're looking at.
Yeah, for the expense analysis, we can assume that the hotel and the condos will be maintained by an association, and then the traditional residential lots, the street frontage out front of those will be owned and maintained by the town. They'll be public right-of-ways.
So I think, Thomas, that's the little bit of work that we need to do to feed our internal data work so that we can give these guys some numbers to plug. Okay, so if you'll grab that, and I'll work with Jan on some other pieces, and we can hopefully give you guys something. With Tim's help, we can give you guys some numbers on.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Mayor. I think between me and Brian, and then add in Tim and Jan, I think that we could come up with a pretty solid set of inputs for expenses. I think we can do that.
I agree.
Okay, good. Thank you. What was the next area? If there's no more question on the financial stuff we've covered tonight, what was the next question that area you thought we should talk about?
I had a question about your timeline. What were you planning on? What's the timeline for the project? What are you building first? What are the goals on that?
So our timeline is, and Todd, you can jump into whenever you'd like, but we will, as soon as we get, we'll get through this process, and as soon as we get through the process of, the what we call our kind of our front end entitlements versus concept plan and the MDA and everything that we recognize we need to do right now. After that, we'll follow that back up with plat submittal, which you guys will have the opportunity to see each one of those plats as we submit them. And we want to put the backbone in all at once. And so you'll see you'll see a backbone that will spine throughout the entire development that is kind of the major road right of ways. And then the next thing that we are going to get to the city, we hope next week, so you guys have plenty of time to review, is going to be kind of a phasing schedule that shows at least on the amenities, when we plan on phasing those amenities in. And so we'll say something like, when we get to, I'm just picking arbitrary numbers right now, 100 lots developed or C of Os or something like that, it probably will be tied to a certificate of occupancy. Then we'll build, this amenity. And when we get to another certain amount of units, we'll get to this amenity. This is something that Todd and Thomas and I and Polly have been kind of working on. And so that way, we just want to make sure that as we build the amenities, those will be maintained by the HOA. We're going to be building them, but they're going to be maintained by the HOA. We want to know that we have enough members to be able to maintain them. And so we'll put together a phasing plan, at least as the amenities go. I know that wasn't your total question, Sherry, but I probably implied in there is when those get built. We'll have a plan for how all that happens. And as far as the overall development, we will probably start right away on 3 or 4 different product types. We've said this all along, that the hotel is a bit of an X factor. We can't at this point disclose the people that we're talking to and who we will likely partner with on the hotel or what flag, but we've got real genuine interest from phenomenal hotels and hoteliers. And so, but we view that as the crown jewel of the property and something that we don't want to rush. We want to do right. And so we're just trying to make sure that we have, the right operator, the right flag, as we put that together. But we have a pretty aggressive development plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions for these guys? Again, Thomas, was there, when you listed off some stuff at the beginning, I'm not sure, I know we talked financials, I know we talked zoning, what was the other, I think there was one other thing you wanted to talk about.
I think we had 2 other items that I think the council and I think Todd and McKay wanted to talk about. I know the council had asked a little bit about some clarity on the give gets, and there were some discussions with regard to open space, undisturbed land is kind of how it will be developed. We can get into that in a second, but I know there were some recommendations from the Planning Commission with regard to contributions for pedestrian safe tunnel or underpass for 248, site to be determined, but they noted the importance of that to try to connect the community. I didn't know if you guys wanted to walk through that so you had clarity. We kind of went through that very quickly at the last meeting regarding Planning Commission recommendations, et cetera. But Todd and McKay, certainly feel free to jump in if you guys have any upfront thoughts.
No, I think I'll jump in there really quick and just walk through the list that we went through. I think with Polly and Thomas through the MDA, when we look at kind of all of the contributions to this project as it relates to not only just the project approvals itself, but also the PID dollars coming in to support a lot of the amenities. We've talked about the $2 million contribution to the underpass. We talked about north of $10 million in amenities that would be public amenities, or I should say available to the public. We'll have to have, we haven't finalized it, but some sort of fee structure for town residents. Trail system, so there's an entire trail system that hopefully in the future can connect to other trail systems. Those trails will be used during the summer for hiking, biking, walking. Wintertime, hopefully some of those same activities, potentially cross country, ski, as has been noted, kind of a demand in the town. Hotel, obviously a big deal. We just talked about the fiscal analysis of that, but also from a revenue standpoint, from a draw, that increases the demand for retail and other amenities that are in there. Commercial, obviously we're proposing quite a bit of commercial in there. And then the last was just the overall fiscal impact of the town. Obviously, we've got to add in those expenses, but from a revenue standpoint, it's a significant number. More than 50% of the town's annual budget. In terms of an increase there. So that's kind of on the give side. On the get side, we're talking about 577 ERUs. The approval to use the PID. And then kind of tying all that back in with the zoning and the MDA. So pretty simple on the get side, pretty exhaustive on the give side as we lay it out. But again, we're excited about that part of it. we feel like there's a huge benefits to not only the community, but the town. We feel like this can really be a crown jewel and a real shining star in that area. And we think we'll create a lot of draw and really hopefully generate that demand for the retail and commercial that everyone's hoping for by having, this great community with great amenities and all the things that come along with it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, there was one thing actually that we also wanted to go over is, I don't know if Mr. Mayor, are you the one that's controlling the screen right now and the map? Would you mind zooming in? Would you mind zooming in on the kind of the amenity core where we've got the pond and the amphitheater?
I just wanted to point out what a great job you've been doing all night, Mr. Mayor. I mean, you're really good with that mouse. It's been a pleasure to watch. Much better than Thomas.
Of a mayor, but I'm a really good admin.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk to the council members about is on the concept plan that we had approved with the Planning Commission, we've always had the expansion of the existing pond in there. Todd and I have been talking with Thomas about an alternate idea that we wanted to run by you. We didn't want to turn in another concept that didn't include that and have council members be like, hey, what happened? We love the pond and we want the pond. So I'm going to go over a couple concerns that we have with it as we've thought about it just in hindsight, retrospect, and then an alternate idea and get your perspective on what you think. We can always stick with the pond, but we've got another idea. So a couple of our concerns, I should say, on the pond is that we're expanding it. One of our major concerns is, unlike a pool that we can gate and close at say 10 o'clock at night or something like that, the pond we can't close. With the casitas and some of the other units that are around it, one of my real concerns is having a toddler wander out into the pond, and just the liability that goes along with it. That's kind of a concern for me. Another one of the concerns that Todd and I have is we of course don't want to see the pond end up like the pond down by the golf course. We know that has been a concern for the city. We certainly don't want that. The way that it is right now, it's a man-made structure. And we were going to kind of supplement it. I think it may carry some runoff. We don't know. I think it's mostly man-made, but we were going to supplement it and make it bigger. One of the things that we thought about doing, and we just wanted to run the idea by you is we've always had a little stream. We've had a stream that kind of ran into the pond, just again, a man-made deal. And then out of it crossed under the road. We're going to put a bridge in and then over through the condos and then back over to the hotel. And so it was a water feature, much like the water feature that's in the building. You've seen that water feature. It's not operating right now, but as you walk up to the building, they've got that open grate and there's kind of a waterfall that should run up right underneath the building and down. And so we're playing off of that idea and trying to have it kind of move through that central amenity core. We've always loved the idea of how the amphitheater sits up and you look out across that pond. But again, with our concerns of the pond, here's an idea that we wanted to run by and just tell us what you think. We wanted to reduce the overall size of the pond. So we pull it back, and I apologize that I don't have either images or rendering to show you, but we can prepare those for you. But we wanted to pull back the pond so it's still, it really has always functioned more as a visual amenity than it has, at least in my mind, as a functional one. I think that it has functional use to it without question, but I think it's more of a pretty thing. And so we were going to reduce it down so you still had that beautiful, have a pond that you look across from the amphitheater back at this pond. But on the other side of the pond, after we reduce it, we wanted to put in, or the idea at least that we're toying with, is putting in a pavilion similar to what they've done over in Tuhey, where it's like it's indoor, but it's also outdoor, and it operates almost like a massive gathering space, event center. Kids use it all the time because they've got ping pong tables and pool tables and a massive television and stuff in there. We picture it with, huge barn doors, maybe that open onto a patio with, fire pits and stuff like that sit by the pond on the one side. And then on the opposite side of that building, it would open up to a grass area where you could run your dog and throw a Frisbee and stuff like that. And so In effect, what we're saying is we would reduce the size of the pond so it's more manageable, still a beautiful feature that has the stream that's running through it with trees and stuff planted around it. And our architects would do a better job of doing this than I'm describing it. But then we add this pavilion in there that we think actually has more functionality. You know, we were talking to Thomas about this. It's almost like you could go use the yoga studio and, you know, be sitting on the deck of the clubhouse with a coffee and send your kids over to the massive pavilion where they're running inside of it. And it's a safe, secure place where you don't have to worry about them. And then it also can double for events and stuff like that. Anyway, we wanted to run that idea by you before we went out and changed anything, and just get your thoughts on it and have your input.
Well, speaking from my experience of having been at events at the 2A facility, I can see where that could be of value to the community. And, you know, we don't really have a decent sized space for anything more than a small gathering in the community today. So if you know, and I've, you know, I've been at 2A for celebrations, for, you know, anniversary parties. I've been there for condolence events, etc. When you have more than, you know, the town hall, even pre-COVID is, you know, at 20 people, it's crushing.
Yeah.
So I could see, you know, I need to do some thinking about it, but my initial idea reaction is might be a nice add. We'd have to see the balance of, you know, I don't want to puddle up there either. So,
Of course.
you know, and you know, in the winter, the pond has some potential for potentially ice skating if it's of a reasonable size. If we ever get cold winters again. But so that's just, you know, my first blush thought is, you know, I have to learn a little bit more about the facility, but I could see that it might make some sense.
My reaction was, yeah, I think it sounded really nice, Matt. Picture's worth 1,000 words, so maybe a little bit of an artist rendering might give us a better conceptual idea of what it's going to look like, or what your thoughts are.
Okay, we can put that together, and we just wanted to prep you guys. We didn't want to show up with something different and have everyone be like, hey, you know, it's not what we had all discussed. And so we just want to make sure that we prepped you before anything like that happened. If you don't have any more questions on that, I would say the other concern that the council members had was parking specifically for the events. And we're working on a parking plan. I can tell you what we're doing is we're taking out a couple units where the casitas are. Actually, by decreasing the pond a little bit, it'll allow us to pull the pickleball courts down so we can get a parking structure right there by the clubhouse, which I think that we need desperately. I think you got to have parking by that clubhouse. And so we're going to have 2 decent sized parking fields, one that has anywhere between 30 and 50 stalls by the clubhouse. And then if you're to take your mouse, Mr. Mayor, just to the right side of the clubhouse where that first pickleball court is where our parking stalls will probably be, just up higher by the clubhouse. Yep, right up there. Yep, exactly. We'll get rid of a couple of those casita units, move the pickleball courts down a little bit, and put in some nice parking up there. The other place that I think is probably the best place to put it, where at least where Todd and I have in our minds, we think it's the best place to put it, is over by the condos. Just as you're bending from the lodges and coming up, we want to have another stall or another, probably 30 to 50 stalls. Yep, exactly, right into there. That's going to get expanded, and it's right across from the street from the amphitheater. And so we're hoping to get, all of the condos are going to be parked within the building. The hotel will likely be parked within the building itself. And so most of the street parking that we have, or most of the surface parking that we have, is going to be to handle basically the boutique hotel. And we've got some tuck under garage stuff there, as you guys have seen. We've got the stalls for the retail over there. And we'll have some on street. We're actually taking 2 of those condo buildings and pulling them up to the street with on street parking, because we're putting that retail on the ground floor, that, you know, in response to what the city was looking for there. So we're going to have on street parking there. And by and large, like we should have, I think, enough parking to be able to handle events, all of the retail that's up there, and the restaurants. And we should have an exhibit for you the next time we meet.
So when you say on street, you mean directly off the street, so that we're not changing the width of the road. We're just doing nose in parking or whatever. That's
right. So if you could imagine, we've got a little bit of grade. We've got not a little bit of grade. We've got quite a lot of grade going from if you right across from the boutique hotel, you've got that little cul-de-sac looking thing, right? So yeah. In order for our retail to function properly, we need to have parking in front of it. And so what we'll do is we'll pull those buildings, pull those buildings a little bit closer to the road, because the way they are right now, they are way down the hill. So we'll pull those buildings closer to the road, so you can actually park, like pull your car up, park right in front of the building, you know, shop at the retail. Yeah. And so that's basically where the on-street parking will be.
Okay.
So when you give us the parking, you know, map in more detail, can you just, you know, make sure it's identified where the on-street parking is, even if it's not the number of spots, at least where we kind of get a better picture of that? That would be great.
For sure. And we'll have stall counts and everything for you, Ralph.
Yeah. Hey, on the same area of, call it cars, you did submit a traffic study, I believe.
That's what I was getting ready to pull up here.
Yeah. Can we get, so are you prepared to go through that tonight? Because I went through it, but I didn't feel like I had enough depth of knowledge coming out of it after looking through it. So that's one thing. The second thing I really thought, and I know we've talked about this as well, have you given any kind of quote unquote engineering view to the view shed protection, so to speak, for the, you know, the housing behind, you know, basically the development behind you, Soaring Hawk? So, you know, there are concerns, and I know you kind of gave us a good, you described it well to me, but do we have any, you know, kind of factual information around that? And again, you may not have that for this meeting, but it'd be nice to have, at least have, you know, hey, we surveyed the property. Here's what we feel is, you know, any loss of view shed, or, you know, where we might have some problems, or we move this around to reduce the impact of any view shed. And that's piece of our zoning. We made that, you know, that's part of our general plan. That's part of our zoning. So if you could bring that the next time, if you don't have it here, that would be terrific.
Yeah, Ralph, we're happy to discuss the traffic study if you'd like. If you guys need more time to go through it, we're happy to do that. There wasn't a ton of you know, really there wasn't a lot to it. I mean, it's a pretty basic traffic study. We actually had a meeting with UDOT once this traffic study was completed. This traffic study was sent to UDOT. We had a call with all the stakeholders at UDOT, and our engineer PEC used to work at UDOT. And so they're very well versed in what that entails. Essentially, it's going to be an accel decel lane, and you know, that's the biggest portion of it. Like I said, we can get into some of the specifics there, or if everyone wants some more time to review that, happy to do that. As it relates to the view shed, we're actually going through an entire grading plan analysis per Ryan's request. And what that grading analysis is going to do is allow us to really dig into the view shed. There's some specifics in there in terms of vantage points. And I assume this is what you're referring to, Ralph. There's vantage points in the zoning code that ask for what it looks like from different vantage points throughout the town, from Highway 40, from Jordanelle, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to be providing that to the town. so that you can see kind of what it's going to look like from these different vantage points. We just don't have that yet. It's quite a process. It's very, very expensive actually. But it will give us a really good idea of what those view corridors and view sheds will look like. We just don't have that completed yet because it's kind of a multi-step process in terms of the survey, the grading plan, implementing the grading plan into a program that gets into a 3D program, and then they start dropping in buildings to essentially, kind of massing to essentially mimic what those buildings will look like and how they will sit in the topography with specific grades, so you can really see what it'll look like. So I think you'll be really happy with what we come up with, and I think you'll be pleased with the amount of work and time and effort we put into it, so that you can really get a feel for what this is going to look like.
Yeah, that sounds great. And by
The
the
other
way,
thing, Todd, is sorry, Rob.
I was just going to finish
that
that off
there's-
with, let me just finish this off here and then I'll hand it over to you. If we could get that, certainly before any meetings, any open public meetings, I think there's going to be a lot of questions around that, obviously density and things like that, but, protection of view sheds is what we'd still like to maintain. It sounds like you're giving some more thoughtful analysis. If you could be even, provide any documents even before the next meeting, so then they become public material and we could share that with the town.
Yep, no problem. And we'll happily provide that at least 10 minutes prior to the meeting. So I'm just kidding. We'll get you plenty of time, plenty of time to look at it.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't know if you're seeing the concept plan, but this gray bar that I drew on here is where this property backs up to another development which have lots there. And I'm sure that the lot owners that will be, whose properties back up to the property line are going to want to know how the heights of these buildings are going to affect their view sheds. So we'll need to be able to address that.
Mr. Mayor, I think,
because you'll hear from them.
yeah, and I mean, one of the things you can see it when you're out on site, and we'll prepare some exhibits for you guys to review, but the topography, we've got a considerable amount of fall from where their existing road plane is to where our property line begins. And so I think we'll make sure that we prepare that and they can understand it. But I think that we're sloping off enough to where I don't know that it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a huge impact. So.
Yeah, I think to McKay's point, there's so much topo that what we're trying to do, and just to give everyone kind of an idea on how the grading plan is going to come in, we're trying to be very, very careful in the grading plan, the way the roads are set, the way the units are set, not only for the view shed, but for each individual unit in the community and each project and what you really see from these different vantage points. And so we're trying to be very judicious with our use of grading, slope, retaining walls, units themselves. We're trying to pick up grade within the units using walkout units and tuck under units. So we're really getting very creative to try and make sure that we can produce a superior product at the end of the day. And not just, obviously, we're not just going to cut this thing down and make it a flat slope, but I think everyone's going to be really happy with the end result of all the work we're putting into this.
Hey, Todd, I'm so glad you brought up the grading plan, because I recall at our last meeting, our engineering department had supported the idea of you providing a conceptual or preliminary grading plan. And I was hoping we'd get that by now. Maybe that takes a while, but
yeah, they're very extensive, Chris. It takes a long time to produce that kind of stuff. So
I don't know if anybody else on the call from the town has a comment on that.
Well, Chris, this is Tim and Mayor. I still think that's something we probably need to see, just to kind of have a general idea in regards to, kind of some of the concerns that was brought up in the last meeting and in the last staff report. So I know it is a little comprehensive to do, but it's not.
These guys have said they're working on it. So
yeah, Yeah,
I
as
trust
long
that
as
they
you're
are.
working on it, and you can get us to that, that would be great to see. And it'll help alleviate some questions that we have. Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to bring up one other thing, and this is not something that we've talked about really in public yet, because we're still working at it on the committee level on it, and this is in the post committee. So we've been talking about wildlife corridors. I don't know, Todd and McKay, if you're aware, but we have the dubious distinction of having some of the most dangerous roadways here because of wildlife trying to run across 248, whether they're migrating or just simply crossing over to go get a drink in the Jordanelle. And the committee is starting to work with the wildlife people on some possible mitigating tactics, perhaps upgrading the fencing, et cetera. But some of those mitigating tactics also include creating, natural spaces where wildlife can, for example, get a drink on that side of the highway. Because, with all this development, we're simply displacing all these animals. And as everyone here knows, hardly a day goes by without seeing a dead deer on the side of the road here. And we've got to, as a town, we want to be addressing those problems.
I think, one of the things that I agree with you, Chris, I think that that's wise. And the development, and I know this is consistent with the rest of Hideout, but we have no fences in any of the development. And then also we've got, we'll have and we'll show you when the trail system is developed, but we'll have 8-foot asphalt trails. That's one of the things we've talked about with Thomas is having some pedestrian trails to work, but also having some natural ones. And so we've got corridors for deer and other wildlife to be able to use that, assuming it's not a cougar that's, coming along, somebody's catching them on the trail somewhere. But
we have those too. There have been two.
Hopefully they're not running on the trails.
They're around. They're just part of the natural.
Yeah, and they're certainly up there. I've seen them. I've seen them up in the Golden Eagle area.
Hey,
so I know
it just helps with the town members, town of the residents. It helps with their conditioning. They just got to get faster. It's just a simple fact of life.
So, you're getting a lot of these questions from us because this is our really last large parcel in Hideout, right? So we're trying to correct some of the mistakes in the past by, trying to think of wildlife corridors. We're trying to think of, public spaces. We're trying to think of public parks, trails, people getting across, and how can, the town get what the town needs as well. That it's not, we're not just giving more than, we're not coming to a win-win for us. So I just, fair warning that we've got this backlog of items that that just need to be addressed. And unfortunately for you guys,
we're addressing all of them.
Well, we've run out of real estate. We're bordered by Summit County and a lake. So it's like, we've got to, as a town and as a council, try to, be smart about what we do with this very, very important piece of land that we're talking about.
We agree, Chris. We want to be good stewards of the land.
So Todd, just to switch gears for a moment, for care of everybody. So you're showing a tie-in to the development above, which is called Golden Eagle, and you're aware that there is an easement from their property down to SR 248, and they are required to have that functional before we give them more than 30 building permits. And so that's something that you're going to have to work on. And I think you've seen a letter from their legal counsel on a couple of things. So, and then the other point is that this may have to loop differently.
We're already making that change.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to let you know, we have met with Jared regarding that. I think everyone's aware. Our engineering, our road alignment matches up with the surveyed easement. So our engineer took that easement document with the secondary access and made sure that lined up. So right now we have accommodated for that easement that comes through there that's recorded. And we're going to work with those guys to make sure that we get the secondary access in place as soon as possible. So yes, we're aware of it. We're working with them already, and we intend to do whatever we can to be helpful in that situation.
Thank you. I mean, the biggest issue is, obviously timing, because they don't want to have their project held up by our agreement because we haven't finalized your layout yet. So that's something you'll have to take a look at and figure out how to work through.
Yeah, we've already had those discussions, and we've got some ideas there, and we've actually already looked at different layouts, alternative layouts for the access locations, to move that over so that we don't need to go through their property.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of access locations, and I know we didn't talk about the traffic study, but the assumption was, these decel lanes right straight off of 248. When we as a town, I thought we were heading toward, trying to funnel traffic to the future traffic light that's going to be at Tuhey and Golden Eagle, and not have, so many trips per day on, as you have it drawn now, I think the western part of this drawing is around on or near the existing driveway for the home that's up there. Is that true? That's what that
That's
Yes.
over here.
Yeah,
That's over here.
really not a great spot. I mean, unless we're going to get a traffic light there, and I don't know, that doesn't align with with the Hideout Canyon entrance. So
Yes.
The,
So go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say
saying,
we don't own the property across from the Hideout entrance, so we would have no way to tie into that even if we wanted to.
well, directly across the Hideout entrance is a sheer wall of
Yeah,
blast.
can't do anything there.
Can't do anything there anyway.
Yeah, that was not intended to be anything but a three-way stop, Chris, per the UDOT agreement, up, down, and out of the highway, out of the Hideout Canyon Road. However,
I don't remember that. I
in
remember
recent discussions with UDOT, they are, at least my understanding was they were planning to change their requirements on this highway to suggest that there should be other lights beyond the ones we had initially identified. So I don't know what they've told you, Todd and Mac, in your discussion, but they told me that they were going to start requiring all new tie-ins to have at least XL, decel, and possibly some lighted intersections, depending on their locations.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, we did have that conversation. This project, once the plan's approved and we move this forward to into UDOT approval, that will trigger them to finalize their study and to get that decision on down the road. And so once we can show them, what our site plan looks like, the number of units, et cetera, then they'll be able to move that process forward. So yes, you're exactly right. They are looking at that, and we'll make that determination once this project's done.
So this was the traffic study that was shared. I don't want to jump. We kind of got off the track there a little bit. So I don't know if you want to just take a couple minutes and give us a brief overview of what's in here.
Yeah, no problem.
I've seen these before, but I don't know if everybody else has.
Yeah, no problem. And we're happy to discuss any questions, but really the way it breaks down is trip generation. They'll take the number of units and the type of unit that they are. And there's essentially a formula that's not made up. It's just a set formula that's used by all traffic engineers, and that's applied to the type of unit. So for instance, single family detached housing, single family attached, which would be townhomes, and then multifamily housing, low rise, which is the condos, and then the hotel. So those all generate their own trips. And so everything goes by trip generation, and the trip is based on historical averages for that type of unit. And those numbers are crunched down into this table, which our mayor has put up here. This is really the meat of the traffic study. This shows you the number of trips. And from this table, UDOT will take and describe and prescribe what needs to happen in terms of the length of the decel lanes, the stacking, the queuing, et cetera, et cetera. And so they'll take this traffic study and then they'll tell us exactly what we need to do, how wide our entrance needs to be. Do you have a right turn lane? Do you have a left turn lane? Do you have a dedicated left? What does that look like? And if a traffic light is warranted, they will manage that, and then they'll start looking at alignment of those entrances and ingress egress areas. But it's all based on the trip generation that's done, and it's kind of summarized in that table there.
And just to add to that, the most of that process is outside of our control. We have the 2 access points. UDOT can't take the 2 access points away from us. So we've got our ingress and egress for the property, but they will, they're in control of what happens on 248,
Oh yeah.
And so we just, we work with them on, like Todd said, how those accel and decel lanes are defined and built.
So what I didn't see in here was, obviously the numbers, but kind of a summary or an analysis, an impact analysis. So where we are currently, is that in there? Because I mean, it was just very light on this conclusionary section. So
I think what it says, Ralph, basically is that we need to have acceleration and deceleration lanes at both of our entrances. In a nutshell.
well, I kind of got that, but so do we know what kind of, is this is this going to be a 10% impact, additional impact over a 1 mile stretch? Do we know what, it's like, I was looking for a little bit more analysis in the conclusions to give all the residents living up there and in town a better idea of what's the expectation. It's hard to relate to just a table of numbers, and I'm a numbers person. I'm looking for a little bit more descriptive words around what's the impact.
No, that's a great question, and this is a little bit of a unique site in that typically, Ralph, you'd be able to quantify those numbers. For instance, if you took Golden Eagle, Soaring Eagle, and you put all their traffic through this subdivision, we'll call this the Boulders, there would be a trip generation that would go through that would have an impact on the residents there. So they would take and they would say the number of units. So let's say it's 610 units in the Boulders, and I don't remember how many in Golden Eagle, but let's say it's 350 or 400 units.
350.
Okay, so 350 units. If those 350 units only point of access was through the Boulders, they would take the number of trips generated by the Boulders residents, all those homes, hotels, condos, etc. They would add in the additional trips, and you could actually come up with a formula that would generate an increase in traffic. The unique thing about this site is, one, we have Highway 248, and we don't access anyone else's property to get to Highway 248 because of the size of Highway 248 and the amount of traffic that it's able to handle, the number of trips it's able to handle per day. It's not even a drop in a bucket compared to what the road is able to handle. Now, if we were talking about 6,000 units or something, then yeah, the UDOT would look at it and say, hey, we probably need to widen a section of 248 to add additional lanes to accommodate additional traffic coming on and off the freeway. But this doesn't get to that point. And so because, and I know this isn't the answer you're going to want, Ralph, but because we access directly onto Highway 248, one, and because Highway 248 was designed to accommodate significant amounts of traffic, the only consideration in the traffic study is the speed at which you enter and exit, ingress and egress the site, which is why they recommend the accel decel lanes. And so then that comes into the length of those accel decel lanes, the time it's going to take you to get up to speed to match the traffic that's coming either eastbound or westbound or north or south, as well as slow down from that traffic speed. And so I know that's not a great answer because you're looking for a specific number, but this is a unique site in that it doesn't necessarily directly impact any other resident because you're getting onto a road that was already meant to accommodate significantly more traffic that even we generate from this site.
Actually, Todd, that's more along the lines of what I was expecting in the document, in the traffic study. So we have a better feel from a traffic engineer, traffic study analysis that gives us a little bit more depth of conclusions and summary and conclusions exactly along those lines. So if you can get a verified traffic engineer to write that up, I would like something along that verbiage to be included in here. So we give a little bit more credence to what we're asking for and to the folks living there and to other people who are just traveling 248. So we all have an idea of what the impact here is a little bit more. I think you in a sense, verbalized it well. Can we include a little bit more into the study itself so it becomes part of the record here?
I think so. It sounds, Ralph, it sounds like it's not so much a function of, I mean, typically the way traffic engineers look at it is how much traffic is being, the way they're looking at is how much traffic is being dumped on 248. And based off that, and based on the speed of the cars coming down the road, what are the length of the acceleration lanes that need to be there in order to give enough time to turn in and turn out? I think what you're saying is not just that, it's, well, how is that going to impact the people on the other side of the street? What can they expect? What's the increase in traffic over what is existing? I think that it sounds like that's probably some of the information that you're looking for.
That would be helpful, so
And
anything that gets a little bit more clarity and comfort to the folks who, live here or will be living here. So it just didn't come out in the summary and conclusions that I saw. So
there's some very good baseline data available on the SR 248 corridor through UDOT and other studies. It gives you a sense of, what's the current flow down that road, at least as of about a year ago. And so they'll be able to, if you can't get them, let me know. I can help you find some. But the data's there. The IT guys should know how to get it. I think you'll find that, they should be able to do some pretty quick math on the impact of the additional units here on the flow. If you assume everybody's leaving at the rates that you're talking about here, what does that mean during peak hours as a percent of increased flows?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, oftentimes we come up to the corner of Hideout and 248, and you may have to, the average wait is, 22 seconds or something. What's the impact there? Is that, roughly, I'm not, I don't know if I need to know if it's 26.5 seconds, but if it's a 20% increase in time to exit, enter 248, let us know. At least so we know what we're dealing with. And I'd love to see that again, that more in that conclusionary kind of summary available to, the town in the open public meeting. So we have, so people can ask questions around that.
Yeah,
Does that make sense,
that's a really good.
Am I asking for too much here?
No, I think
question.
that's easy. No, I think we can get most of that in there and yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
So that's all we had. If there's any other questions, happy to answer them. But that was the 2-hour update.
Okay, well, we advertise this as a public hearing. And although we're not taking any action tonight, I'm based on the number of participants on the call tonight. My guess is that there may be some people in on the call who might either want to ask some questions or share a viewpoint. So I am going to open the discussion for public input, and those that want to make a comment, the way you do that is you select raise your hand on the Zoom screen, and we will recognize you and give you the ability to make a comment. So there's a hand up for Patricia Bidwell. So I'm going to give you a chance you're unmuted now, Patricia, so go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. I am a lot owner in Golden Eagle. And I have to tell you, I was under the assumption that the town believed in its, its master development plan and from the stated land use goals and vision. And when I learned that the plot of land in front of us is, the zoning has changed from allowing 85 more units to something close to 600, that kind of density, I was pretty disappointed. And I understand that the town wants some commercial development. I think there have been a lot of comments tonight about, well, more information needs to be had on terms of net benefits and net revenue from this kind of development. But it is a pretty sharp 180-degree turn from what the town, from what our understanding was when we bought as lot owners. But most importantly, I haven't heard a thing about the water use. And, we're the state is in a drought, and I'm very concerned that I hope to make Hideout my home, my permanent home. I'm very concerned about what the town is doing in terms of sustainable growth, given that the Jordanelle is such a precious resource. And this kind of intense development is going to put that much of a strain, but it's not even brought up in the meeting. So
It wasn't
those
brought
are
up
my
tonight,
comments.
ma'am, but it wasn't brought up tonight, but it has been discussed prior. And the developer understands that they would have to bring water rights with them in order to be able to move this thing forward if the council so saw.
Water
So
rights are a
felt-
different thing from the impact, the sustainability. Whether or not you get water rights doesn't mean that you've done a study about sustainability.
Valid point. Give that some thought.
Thank you.
Can I respond to that, Mayor?
Sure, Chris.
Hey, hi Patricia. It's good to hear from you again. Yeah, well, the developers would need to bring the water. I don't know that they could get the water. That has yet to be determined. Also with JSSD, the sewer, I don't know if there's enough capacity there. That's also yet to be determined. So those are great questions that the mayor's right, we didn't talk about tonight, but those are definitely at the top of the list for, their requirements in order for this development to proceed.
Okay, Brett, I'm trying to give you permission to speak. So you should be able to now.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I apologize. I wasn't able to join the earlier part of the call. I see looking at page 25 of the 81 page meeting packet tonight, which is the integrated planning and design doc. And it refers to a submittal being a traffic study and fiscal analysis, but I wasn't able to find the fiscal analysis. And as I had raised on prior calls with town council on this topic, I asked that there be and suggested that there be a net tax revenue, not a gross tax revenue analysis to the town. And I apologize if that's been discussed already tonight, but I didn't see it in the
It has
packet.
been, Brett.
Okay.
So the fiscal study did not make the packet. It should have, but it didn't. So there's a separate document for that. And we did look at that, and it was gross. We did talk about the net, and that the town needs to provide certain data so that we can come up with a net. And that's
Okay.
one of the paths.
Thank you. I apologize. I wasn't able to hear that
So
earlier.
that will
on the
happen.
recording.
That will happen
Okay.
before we
Okay.
go to an end point.
Okay. And I understand they're not asking for a vote tonight from the town council, which I think is probably good, because I continue to not see the justification for adding this much density I don't think it adds enough in my estimation of a net tax base. So thank you. I'll keep my comments brief to that tonight.
Okay, thank you, Brett. I'm going to let Sean come in. So Sean, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hey, thanks for giving me a little bit of your time tonight, and also thank you for spending so much of your free time and everything that you guys do for the town. You know, I've been listening to these meetings for about 4 years now. In fact, in 4 years, I've missed 3 meetings, and those usually are the ones that fell on my wife's birthday, and so I had to do the take her out to dinner thing. But you know, it's been fun to watch the town, particularly when you and Chris, you know, first got on, and you know, you guys kind of overturned a dictatorship and have been making great efforts to do things the right way, and it's been great to watch. And you know, I have to say, looking at what's in front of us tonight, I think that if you approve this plan, it would be, you know, I don't think it's something the previous administration would have done, but I think it would be a step backwards for the standards of this council. And, you know, if you'll bear with me just a minute or two, I've got some handwritten notes. My handwriting isn't very good. So, you know, I'm looking at this piece and thinking, you know, it's the last big piece of property that you guys have in your town. And I think that, you know, one thing I'd encourage you guys to do is, you know, kind of take Richardson Flat out of the picture, and this is it. And who knows what will happen with that property. But if the town doesn't prevail, then you really need to get this piece of property right. You know, building permits are the lifeline of the town. We all know that. And eventually building permits are going to stop, and you're going to need to get the commercial right. You know, I would really like the council to, you know, we saw some studies on the screen tonight, and it's disappointing that those haven't been part of the packet. As a resident, it's disappointing. And, you know, if the town's not getting them with good notice, I think that's unacceptable. As far as the fiscal impact, you know, I don't know. I watch all types of meetings, and I can't remember a time where the developer was providing the fiscal impact. I mean, I'd like to see the developer get Zions Bank to do a study and have Zions Bank get on the call so we can ask them questions. You know, I'm not comfortable, and I hope the town's not comfortable with the developer providing a pro forma and a pie chart and then walking the town through it and making such a big decision on that. You know, the traffic study hasn't been in any of the packets, and it was on the screen tonight, and it's dated February 24th. I mean, that's over a month ago. I don't know why the public hasn't seen that. You know, Chris brought up the grading plan that she's asked for. And at the last meeting, the developer said, well, that's not required at this time in the application process. You know, if the town wants a grading plan, make the developer bring you a grading plan. You know, another issue I've had is I keep hearing in planning commission and the couple council meetings we've heard about deadlines that the applicant has with the landowner. I mean, I don't think those deadlines are the town's problem. The developer can go back and get an extension or close on the property or kick rocks. I mean, I don't think the town needs to be reacting so much to contract deadlines that the developer negotiated with the landowner. Another thing, you know, with this issue of access, and I pulled up the access agreement that the town signed with UDOT on, I think it was January 23rd, 2020, I have written down. And I'm just not seeing how the access is going to work, you know, coupled with the letter in the packet from, forget the attorney's name, Mr. Fields. You know, Mustang, they take a lot of flack in the town, and rightfully so, but you know, you can put me on record of actually agreeing with that letter and agreeing with Mustang for a change. I mean, I think the town needs to take a serious look at that. You know, if you look at the access points that UDOT approved here, you know, and the developer said, well, we have something that shows where else we can put that second access if we can't work it out with this landowner. But if you look at the separation requirements and things like that. I just don't see it, and I don't know where it's going to go. And I would hope that the town, next time they meet with UDOT, can show UDOT that they're doing what they agreed to in this agreement. And another thing is that second access, they have it, UDOT's calling it an emergency access. And then I pulled up their access management plan, and it says emergency access will not be granted to accommodate general vehicular ingress or egress. And I know that you're not talking about granting it, it's already granted, but I think the town should think of UDOT's intent when working with them. It also says the access will be gated and locked. And, so I think there's still some things that need to be worked out on those accesses with UDOT and the neighboring property owner. I had some questions on the density calculations that I think have kind of been swept under the rug. I'd like Thomas to tell me if you look at what they're proposing, there's 146,000 square feet of commercial, 125,000 of that is in the hotel. And then they have 610 residential units, and 150 of those units are in the hotel. And so is there double dipping going on? I don't really know, but I would like, I'd like Thomas to clear that up. That they're also saying, if you take the hotel out, that's where all the density is. So it's really not that dense. Well, if you take the hotel out, it's still over 4 units an acre. That's way more dense than anything we've gotten in town. I think that's pretty much it. I think, Ralph, I'm really interested to see how you vote on this project. I mean, you put Richardson Flat on the ballot, and they provided all the studies and tried to do things the right way. And, if you vote yes on this, where it's a fraction of the size of Richardson Flat and more ERUs, then I don't understand what you like and what you don't like. And I just want to see some consistency and to follow the general plan. And anyway, last comment is that if there was some talk earlier about amending the meeting, if the meeting gets continued and there's no vote, I would also like the public hearing to remain open. If something completely different is going to come in at the next meeting, then I think the public should have an opportunity to comment on it. And hopefully it's available, a day or two before the meeting to the public.
I can answer that now, Sean. Yeah, the public input will continue. The public
okay.
Will continue.
Well, those are all my comments. Again, thank you for all the time and hard work that you put into this.
Well, thanks for your comments. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah. Good comments.
I don't see other hands at the moment. And just as a reflection, Sean, the town has a process. We're running that process. The fact that we're running this process doesn't mean we're voting for or against this proposal. We're doing our due diligence. Landowners have rights as well. And, they're bringing forward a proposal. And this is why we're asking the questions we're asking. We're asking for the details we're asking for. That's why we talked earlier about when I spoke with Jan about having a third-party financial analysis review, which we're working on. So I think I truly believe that we're working to do the appropriate due diligence so that we can inform both the residents and represent our constituents when this does come to a vote. So I appreciate your support comments and want you to know that we're continuing down the path to make sure we understand the pros and the cons of every proposal that comes to us so that we can make an appropriate decision for the community.
Mayor, along those lines, we were talking about, if I can jump in here, I don't know if there's any other comments. Maybe I'll just wait then.
No, there's none at the moment. I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to close the public input portion for tonight. We'll again come back on the next review. And I believe we will the intent is to be available to bring it forward again on April 14th. So we would continue to, we would continue to a date certain on the 14th.
Hey, are we gonna modify
Ralph.
the verbiage? We talked about that. Again,
Yes, yeah, we would change the verbiage. We would for the zoning based on what these guys bring forward, et cetera. And yeah,
thank you.
And we were talking about maybe doing kind of a survey, electronic survey or otherwise, or something where we could gather a little bit more input, not
Yep.
just from the folks who typically jump on the meeting like Brett and Sean as an example, but a little bit wider, wider input, like we did in the annexation, which Sean just brought up. Where are we with that? Any updates?
sorry,
on that?
what?
Well, we were talking about at
Sorry.
least getting a survey out or getting more input.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the thing that's holding us up, Ralph, is that the staff is working on, various modifications to the plan, upgrades based on our comments. And once we have what might be closer to what they think is what we've been asking for clarified, then I think that's the one we would send out a survey. It's up to us if you guys want to do it, recognizing that what we have is not 100% of what we've asked for. We can do that, but it seems to me that these guys are working hard to do some extra work for us, and we should try and incorporate that extra work when we send out a survey.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should have, better, any of the financial analysis, the traffic study, the grading study, the view shed study, all those things kind of wrap into giving someone who would like to, express their opinion, more information to understand, to express an appropriate opinion. So yeah, I agree. I think we should obviously compile that information in the right way. I was just kind of more or less wondering if we had that information tomorrow, would we be ready to do something to get this out to a wider set of, a wider set of our town?
Well, we have the mechanisms in place. We have the survey. We have a subscription to the survey service. We have a distribution list for all the utility owners, users. We know who the non-utility users are, as well as far as landowners. We have a way to contact them. So in general, there's a small percentage of our community that does not share their emails with the town. So those folks would have to be contacted via snail mail.
Yeah,
that's probably
have to do that.
But it's a very small percentage, so I think we could still get a good feedback relatively quickly.
And whatever happened to our approach on mobile phone, where people tend to sign up a little bit more.
That contract is in review with legal, and as soon as I get the go ahead on that, we'll get that going.
I mean, that's almost like we could get more instantaneous kind of feedback, or real-time feedback.
Do that very quickly. Again, I'm just waiting for legal has to give me an opinion on the language in the contract before I can move forward.
Okay, understand.
And legal's on the phone call tonight, so the pressure's on, legal.
Actually, I'm just checking. I think I sent back the edits earlier this week, and I'm just checking that whether they got through, but
yeah,
it's
I
moving.
know I sent something, probably just the way I read it, it looked like there was something you were thinking about still, but maybe I read it wrong.
I just needed feedback from I'll follow up with you on it.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, Phil, this is Bob.
Sure. Go ahead.
Just to circle back, before we move forward and go down this long path, do we need a motion to make a referendum or at least send out a survey to see if the residents of this town even want this? I don't want to waste anybody's time. I don't want to waste the developers' time and resources. I don't want to waste the council's time and resources and whatnot. Where are we with that again?
Wait, you can't do
So
a
I guess,
referendum.
Bob,
Sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
the discussion was, what do we share with the town? Do we share with the town the stuff we have to date, recognizing that there's more information to come and ask them to make a decision, or do we try and get the information that we said we wanted before we send out, an information package? So the current thought process has been, let these guys finish up a few more pieces of the puzzle, and then we'll get it out for review. If the council feels that we should go sooner rather than later with what we have, then we can make that happen. And I see some heads going left to right versus up and down. So that's really where we're at. As far as a referendum, that's a council decision. If you guys want to take it to a referendum, we can.
Well,
talk
do I
about
need?
that.
I definitely think we should do that, because this is a massive decision that will forever affect the town going forward, and it's irreversible. And this needs to be put in the hands of the people. We had some really good public comments tonight. And, I know as councilmen, we're representatives of the town, but this needs to be decided by the town people at the very least, taking some sort of an official survey, but I prefer to do a referendum. If we want to get the referendum started, I would like to make a motion to initiate the referendum process after we get all the information from the developer. Because like I said, I don't want to waste the developer's time if this is something that the vast majority of the town people don't want. So can we start that process?
So unfortunately, you can't, a referendum isn't actually typically started by the council. It's usually by citizens who aren't happy with the council decision. There has to be a decision that's a legislative decision. This would probably fall under that, but you would have to have certain number, I can't remember what it is, 5 sponsors and all that.
Yeah.
So the thing with it is, though, that, if this project is going to go forward, I think the timing would be such that if there were to be a referendum, that would just pretty much sink the deal, is my assumption, because the referendum process, the vote wouldn't be able to happen. I don't know if we've already missed the June, like the primary deadline. I'd have to go look, but it'd probably be in November, the vote. Anyway, it wouldn't happen before June, probably not till November. And it seems like the developer's timeline is pretty short. So I think the process, the reason why we have public hearings at this point is to get input from the public as to what their thoughts are on the project. And then it's up to the council to make the decision.
Maybe I
Okay.
could just add something to that, Bob, because I did, I was intimately involved in the referendum for the annexation. And, just to agree with Polly on the fact that it's a long process. It's outside the town council. There's a lot of documentation, and then getting a minimum of a number of signatures within a certain time frame, getting it on the ballot. It's a long process. I can tell you this, during that period of time that we worked on the referendum, put a lot of time into it and effort. I think that is absolutely the right way to do it. But I can say that the survey, at least that I put out, so I did an electronic survey during the process of the referendum, and it actually came up almost synonymous with the results of the final output of the referendum. And that's why I was kind of leaning into more people tend to respond to the surveys, the electronic surveys. You get some good input, and it's almost equivalent to a true referendum without the intense work that you have to go through. So food for thought around that, Bob. Would certainly be happy to share at least the 2 types of results that I saw that came up by doing both the survey and, of course, the referendum. But it takes a while. You got to get on the ballot. You got to go through a lot of signature, and then they have to go through verification of signatures. When I think an electronic survey performs probably 85% of that. And that's
Okay.
why, yeah. Does that make sense, Bob?
No, that makes sense. I like the way you're thinking. I would encourage all the residents of Hideout who are listening on this meeting, if you want a referendum, apparently we need at least 5 people to get the petition started per what Polly, the town attorney, has said. If you want to go that way, I think you need to get the ball rolling, since apparently I can't do that
You can't,
as a
you can't,
councilman.
Bob.
What's
You
that?
can't get a referendum going until a decision is made by council.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob,
Well,
so we would have to.
okay.
One thing that you can do, if you are, what I'm hearing from the council is this desire to get more input from your citizens. And, maybe what you do is you have an open house over the next 2 weeks, so that it would be noticed as a public hearing, but you could have it be more informal than just the public comment at a presentation, where it's just where you can discuss it with the public.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds necessary. I mean, as a councilman, unless we get public feedback from what's a very major decision, I can't see any situation prior to that happening where I could even consider voting yes and shoving it down everyone's throat. If we learned anything from Richardson Flats, it's that, the way to start is to take the temperature of the town residents and see where we want to go with this. Like I said, there's things I like about the project, there's things I'm concerned with, but we need to know sooner than later if the residents of the town even want that. That's all I wanted to put in.
Yeah, and I, on the referendum side, there's a lot of good things about the referendum that we could pull out into a set of meetings. And we were doing that during the annexation. If you remember, we had some public, outside meetings. Of course, that was, I think, more during the, the spring, if I remember. But the point being is you can organize this, you can do more electronic surveys, and you could, certainly do the, the cell phone, the mobile phone application that we've been talking about, and take some pros and cons, like a referendum goes through, initiate the pros and cons. And it doesn't have to be like one side takes another, but we should, share that in an objective manner with the town, saying, here's what, the write-up is on either side. We'd like your input, or, you should be giving us input, because it's not just our town and the council, it is the town. And that's why I also believe exactly in that. And I was so glad I got involved in the referendum, except it's a lot of work, and, it's a lot of planning ahead, so to speak. It took us 8 months, because we initiated the referendum in October. We got we did the vote on June 21st or 22nd, whatever that was. So think of the number of months that took. I think we can compress that and get really good data if we do some of the things you just said, and, some of the surveys, and compress that down, and we can get some really good feedback in a short period of time.
All right. So Phil, do we need any type of resolution to be floated right now so that we can get the ball rolling on any type of survey, as Ralph suggested?
I've got an idea. You want to hear, if you guys are open?
Sure.
Well,
McKay.
McKay, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't, and I apologize to interrupt, but do we want to just invite the whoever would like to come up to the property, and we can answer any questions about the property? They can get into the home, look at the site, catch the vision of what it is that we're trying to do, and have basically almost like an open house where we answer any questions that they would have.
That's fine by me.
Yeah, I'd
Can I
say
make a comment?
Sure, Carol.
Thank you. I've been trying to make a comment all night. It's hard for me to speak up. Anyhow, I feel that one of the best things that the developers could do is get that model going. I believe I heard them say that they had an actual physical model that they were working on that would show the slope, that would show the roads, that would show what the units would look like. And I think if you have that available to our town members, maybe along with an open house so they could get a general idea of what the development's going to look like on that hillside, that would help answer a lot of questions. So I don't know where you are in terms of completing that model, but didn't I hear you say you were going to try to do a physical model?
It's not a physical model, it's a computer model, and it's just kind of a 3D model. Now, I don't know, those take a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of money, and we're working on them right now. I don't know how soon that we'll be able to, I mean, it's certainly not going to be, it's going to be hard to carry off everything it is that we're proposing and doing in detail, you know, to sit every single home on the lot, how it's going to be situated, the roads, the grading, everything. That would be an immense amount of work. We're working on a preliminary grading plan, which shows some of that. But you know, I just don't want to raise the expectations that we're going to have some massive rendered, you know, 3D fly through or something like that of the entire site, Carol. We're working on something. I just don't want the expectation to be so high that it's just not realistic at this point.
Well, and I think to add a little more detail to that, Carol, specifically the zoning, the town's zoning code requires for the view shed a few vantage points, and those are what we're specifically working on. So we are creating a model. It's a 3D digital model, computer generated model that's based on the grading plan, and it'll have massing structures showing, you know, representing the houses, et cetera. But it won't be of every single lot of every single location. It'll just have a couple different vantage points which are required per the town's code. So hopefully that gives you an idea, but it'll be much better than a flat piece of paper, if that's helpful.
Right, and if you could have it available, like if you do an open house. And I do want to make one other comment, and that is, it's always been my comment about these big developments. It was my comment with Richardson Flat, and that is the town needs a gathering place. And you addressed that briefly tonight when you talked about maybe cutting the pond down and building some kind of structure around the pond. But I still think that you need to consider what the residents of Hideout want. And over and above over anything else, they have always said they wanted a community center, a gathering place for the town. This is our last chance to get it. And I'd really like you to consider expanding what you were talking about, the barn or whatever you were going to put next to the pond, and maybe think more about our community center, our gathering place, and a place where we could all come together, even a modified town hall kind of thing. So, you know, to me, your development is all about you and what you're going to get out of it, and not really how it's going to benefit the town.
Can I answer that, Carol? I've appreciated so much the time that you guys have all spent, and we're happy to do something like that. When we say a barn, if you were to go over and look at Tuhay's Pavilion, it's much more than a barn. It's extensive, but to say that this is all about us, and to listen to the public speak about what it is that we're proposing, I understand. I get it. You guys live here, and you know you want to see things done in a very individual and specific way. But to suggest that we're doing nothing for the town is far from accurate. Everything that we have done from the beginning of this proposal, from the time that I spent with Jan roughly 2 years ago, when we were talking about purchasing the golf course, talking about purchasing the settlement parcel, which, by the way, the settlement parcel is roughly 6 acres, if I'm not mistaken. It's got 150 units on it. Okay. So, you know, when I first began this conversation with
about 100 units, it was zoned for 150, but only allowed for 100.
Okay, well, 60 units, you know, 100 units. So much more in that 6 acres, but there's no amenities. There's none. That's why I even began this conversation. And we were actually directed to the site. And in the process of going through this, we have proposed an amphitheater. We have proposed a pond, which we're now modifying to have a massive pavilion with grass around it. We've got a clubhouse. We've got a trail system. We have a proposed underpass at this point. Whether or not UDOT accepts it, we're working on it, which would allow both wildlife and pedestrians to cross back and forth. We have answered $1 million a year in revenue. Now you can talk about whatever the city's expenses are, and I'll be interested to see what those are, but I don't see anywhere in Hideout producing $1 million in revenue a year. We've got a hotel that's 150 keys. We've got condos that are 150 keys. What we are providing absolutely is a benefit to the town, without question. It is more than this town has ever dreamed of or seen, what we're proposing and what we're offering. And so I understand the concerns. I get it. I have been through so many cities, so many times. I understand the homeowners, they always come out. I understand the concerns over traffic, the concerns over density, the concerns over open space. We understand them, but we're responsible, good developers. And we're doing everything that we can here to balance our needs with the community's needs. And if you guys can't see that, to be honest, I'm not quite sure what more we can do.
Hey,
Because
hold on, this is Chris. I think I've listened to enough. Carol has an extremely valid point. I really implore you to think about.
I'm not discarding.
Please don't interrupt me. I know I interrupted you, but please don't dismiss it. It's not going to go well for you if you do.
Chris, I'm not dismissing. I've said already over and over, I'm not dismissing it. What I'm saying is to suggest that this is all about us and that we're not providing any amenities and or fiscal benefit to the city is just not accurate. I'm not disagreeing. I'm not poking fingers or anything like that. I'm just saying that's an unfair characterization of what it is that we're doing. And I hope, Chris, both you and the rest of the council can see that. And I would hope that the citizens can see that too.
I don't believe Carol said any amenities. I think she is asking for a particular one that is in our general plan: public gathering spaces, a community center, town hall. We've outgrown it. These are things that we need. And the point I tried to make earlier is, unfortunately for you, this is our last big parcel to have the opportunity to get these things that the town really wants. So we do appreciate, you going in on the underpass. I don't think wildlife will use the underpass, so we kind of have to think a little bit harder about wildlife, but getting people safely across 248, very happy that you're considering that and considering contributing to that, and et cetera. So like I said, you have to listen. I don't see that you've gone back to try to pencil in something like that. You've kind of made.
We're happy to do that, Chris. That's what I said to Carol. I'm happy to do it. We will do that.
Okay, that would be terrific. We would really love to see that.
Yeah, and that was the first thing that I said, and that's one of the reasons why we proposed it, and so we're happy to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have one last question that you probably won't like that much, but because I hear that a lot of the pushback on the density, whether it has to do with water or traffic, is there any room for negotiation on density on your part?
I'll jump in and answer that question, and it's a fair question, and not that we don't like it. We've had this discussion a number of times, and we totally understand it. We go through this all the time, and so we're not unused to having that being posed to us. The short answer is, obviously, there's always negotiation in everything. The long answer is the cost of the infrastructure, the cost of the amenities, the cost of the contribution to the town, the cost of all those things have to be borne by items that produce revenue. And so there's a balancing act there where as you take density away, you lose the ability to fund those other improvements. And so it's one of those things where, the fewer units we have, the fewer amenities that can be provided. And I guess that's the question here. We've literally tried to solve, and I think that's why McKay's so passionate about it, is we put a lot of time and effort and a ton of money into listening to what everyone's concerns were, attempting to try and solve those, understand them, and try and solve them. And it feels like, I'll just be candid, it feels like it's never enough. And I think that's where it comes down to, that give and take. And we talked about that with Thomas earlier on in the meeting. But at some point, there's a point of no return, from an economic standpoint, where it just doesn't make sense, on a $100+ million project and investment in the town. It just doesn't make sense if there's not enough economic benefit for both sides. And, we've been on this plan now for, 6-9 months with these amenities, and we've made adjustments as we went every time. And we've tried to add, and we've tried to improve, and we've tried to adjust and really tried to accomplish what the town wants. And we thought we were there, and it sounds like maybe we're not. And so we need to do some more work. But, as I said, I mean, that all comes down to that balancing act of how much can one project support. And like I said, I think McKay's comments go back to it. It feels a little unfair for one project to bear the burden for every request or every wish that the town has ever had in trying to satisfy that. But we're willing to try, and we're willing to do what we can. But there will become a point where it just doesn't make economic sense from a risk standpoint for anybody. And that's not just us. I mean, we've done big projects like this all over the country, and this is not foreign to us. But there is a point where economically and from a risk profile, it just doesn't make sense to pursue any further.
Sherry, we'll make an effort. Todd and I will make an effort to go back through the plan and see if there's areas where we can shave.
I'm just thinking compromises somewhere might help.
We're trying, and we will. We'll go back. We'll go back and look at it.
Thank you.
One of the things that Nate Brockbank did, during that period of the referendum, prior to the referendum, we had a lot of, we had 6 months. He did, and there was probably more against initially, but at least one thing that he did was he went around and he talked to, he walked door to door, almost like, a potential elected official would, so to speak, and brought the message to individuals and cared to, probably had to overcome a lot of negativism because ultimately it turned into, in his case, a 2-to-1 in favor. And I just look at my own scenario during that whole referendum process where I was in favor, I was against, and I was then finally in favor after all the facts, information, different reports and analysis came in, so I could have the most information at hand. And I think that really helped the townspeople. Now, maybe we don't have that much time to do something like that, but I think you can compress some of that, and you can probably do some, what I would say, sharing of information at a personal level, not just in a survey, not just in, group meeting. I thought he went out of his way to do exactly that. And I thought, in his situation, at least he got 2/3 of the public of our town to, buy into, why this annexation would be a good thing and that there were plenty of benefits there. So I would just encourage more, anything you can do to summarize your, everything that, Carol said, from 3D, whatever, even if it's on just computer rated design, CAD, or whatever it might be. All those things, I think, lend to more information getting out to the folks in town. And there's a lot of smart people in town who will look at this both economically, in terms of how it's going to impact the value of their home. One of the things that I continually get from various people is we have enough money to pay to double our taxes for the town. So if you think, so right now, if you have an assessed value of $1 million. That's assessed. And so if the market value is that means the market value would be $1.818 million to get an assessed value of $1 million. That would bring in to the town only $823. That's a pittance for most of the people in this town. You know, if they said, hey, we're going to double the Hideout tax rate from what it is now currently at 0000823 to, you know, 00164, you know, they wouldn't really care because most of the people have enough money in town that $800 a year wouldn't bother them in the least, which would bring us to the economic benefit that you're bringing. So going to Carol's point and Chris's point and Bob's, I think you've got to bring in some other value to the town. I'm not saying you aren't. I'm just saying if you're going to express that and you're going to get buy-in, which we all, you know, we want to see what the rest of the members of our rest of the community would feel, then, you know, I think you have to be aware of both the capability of the folks in our town who could shell out $823 for, you know, a good dinner. You know, so a once a year kind of thing is not going to be that much of an impact to them. But the amenities, the value, the benefit, will it add value to their home? Those things are probably equally, if not more valuable. I'm just sharing because this is what I hear continually from, you know, the friends in town that I talk to in terms of how we judge things economically and in terms of how we judge things from the benefits, you know, from the environmental side. So anyway, food for thought. I'll stop my rant there a little bit. So hope that's
thanks, Ralph. No, we appreciate it. It's helpful.
So, okay, so
Mayor, Council, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, if I could help, I mean, I think we could organize an open house. It could be an open house where we have maybe some boards up. We could have maybe some interactive opportunities with dots to kind of get general input. It could be something that is open for, you know, a number of days where people could come and kind of peruse it at their own on their own time. We could limit it to times that we're there, or we could even do something kind of similar virtually if you would like. I think that may be a good way to start to get the input that you're asking for. Does any or all of that make sense?
yeah, Thomas, I think that's a great idea. I like the idea of a couple or 3 successive nights. Now that we have daylight later into the evening, you know, because people do work. Some people do work, although you wouldn't know it by going out in the streets these days. But that we could do something, you know, for 2 or 3 hour windows from, you know, 4 to 7 or 4:30 to 7:30 or something, for a few nights in a row, as a drop-in kind of thing. Of course, we would notice it, so you would have to give it at least, you know, 24 hours, but it'll take us that long to get it together anyway. But yeah, I would say that along with the data sharing that we want to do. And I think, you know, maybe the solution is that since some of the data is still being worked on, maybe we put it out and we make sure that we put out what we have and we tell residents that there are other pieces coming and they'll be available, you know, before the council votes, because obviously we're not going to vote without the information we asked for. So I think, you know, we just go ahead and push out, you know, an information package in addition to an open house setup, to start that process.
Okay.
We're good with that.
And that way, and we'll just identify we'll make sure everybody knows that there's some gaps that we're working to fill. And, you know, we did that in the prior process where we shared what we had and said, there's more work we're doing and we'll get that to you as well. And we can do the same thing. And that may make it easier for folks to start getting into. So let's grab that. Jan, we'll work with Jan and Carol and the communications team and get that thing going.
That works for us.
Okay, thank you. So the meeting, the fourth piece, there is something on the agenda which we talked about briefly, but don't need to go through it because I just want to make sure that the golden, the Golden Eagle easement folks sent this comment. I know you've seen it. I just want to acknowledge on the record that it's been reviewed by you and the town staff as well, and we're aware of it and working to address the issues that are raised. Sorry, it's small, but basically it addresses the fact that they need to, if the council remembers, we told Golden Eagle that they needed to start putting a road in by the time they got to their 31st build. And they agreed to do that. And so they're ready to start working on that. And we got to make sure that they have the opportunity to do that per the plan so that the folks who have property up there can move ahead as appropriate. So. Okay, so thank you all for picking up an extra meeting again. I know it taps into everybody's allotted time frame, but I do appreciate that we're doing this. I know that the development team appreciates the fact that we're making extra time to help them work through some of these issues and get feedback. This would be a lot longer process if we stuck to once a month. So thanks for doing that to the council and the community for weighing in. We will be continuing this discussion with some different language. And I don't know what's the right thing for me to say, Polly. How do I do this appropriately?
You're gonna continue the hearing on the zoning and the MDA to April 14th.
Okay.
And there may be a work open house prior to that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to continue to a date certain on the zoning and the MDA to the next to April 14th at the moment. That's a date certain, and we will between now and April 14th get the open house up and running as well as an information package out. Survey/information package.
Mayor, one last question. Do you expect another special meeting this month? I mean, just any indication of that?
No, Ralph, because tomorrow's the end of the month.
No, that's a good point. I meant that.
And we have
All
to
right,
notice it. So no, we're good for March.
You got me on that one. But
You're good for March, my friend.
Thank God we're not doing something. No, but I meant, are we looking at more special meetings in April? I just wanted to get a heads up on that.
At the moment, I think based on the conversation that we had, I think from Thomas and Todd and McKay, I think the 14th is probably the next target for them. We'll figure out just based on the if we get the info stuff set up and running and the sessions, I'm sure they'll get some good feedback from that as well. And, they want to get those done earlier rather than later, Thomas, because hopefully they'll want to address any of the things that come up as part of that when they come forward. So I don't think we'll have anything before the next scheduled meeting in April, Ralph. There may be another one prior to the May meeting, but I can't project that far.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay, so we're going to continue, as I said, to the 14th, the zoning and the NDA discussion. We're also committing to a open house and survey/info package prior to that time. For the
Mayor,
benefit of the community.
sorry, can I comment?
Yes.
Ralph, I think, this is so time consuming for us and we've got other business to attend to. Isn't it like budget season and we have all these things
It is.
council has to cover as well. So, because this is so time consuming and maybe it has to be in its own like special session. So we can attend to the rest of the business of the town and not be completely consumed in our meetings by this.
I think that's a valid point, Chris. really valid point. I'm gonna let the staff work on this bit over the next couple of weeks, and based on the amount of content and stuff that's going to get produced, I think we may decide that we may add something specifically. I think that's a really good point, Chris, because the next council meeting is going to be a fairly long one as well. So, valid point. Okay. So with that, I think we are ready to adjourn. So I need a motion from council to close the meeting and adjourn.
So moved.
So who was that?
Both of us.
Oh, okay.
One.
Well, fine. Then I'm going to put it down as you, Carol.
All right.
And then a second.
Second.
I need a second. That'll be Chris. Thank you. Okay. Ralph,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
I believe Bob has dropped off because of his need to have his appropriate rest period before he gets behind the wheel of an airplane again. So we'll skip that. Say he's not available. Chris,
Yes.
Carol.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Thanks to Todd and Mac as well for a very helpful and deep discussion tonight. Very useful. Well, thanks all,
guys.
and we will talk again fairly soon.
Thank you all. We appreciate your time. We really do.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
guys.
Good night.
Hey.